Okay, hello everybody, my name is Alex and welcome to the Theros Beyond Death pre-release here at Paradise Games. I am joined by fellow Scoop Mom member James.
How's it going?
Hello James.
I'm James.
Yeah, we're here for some deck building here for the upcoming event. Obviously every pre-release event comes with some deck building beforehand, so I'm going to sit here in the room with James. Obviously I will be in the booth today, so I'm going to do my best not to give too much assistance, but figured I'd come alongside and join him as he opens the packs as we get our hands on these cards for the first time. So go ahead and crack it open.
Let's do this thing.
All right, what are you hoping to pull?
Uro.
Just Uro? Number one, snap off Uro?
I do not care about the rest of the cards.
Uro does seem like
this is a Temple of Malice.
The best card. Temple of Malice, the pre-release promo. That's certainly a pretty good one. Go ahead and open it out. Your pack here for you. Show a little bit of the camera. This is a pretty foil. I like it.
This card is bad.
Nyx Bloom Ancient is the first rare here. So what is your general sealed... God, I cannot get this open. What is your general sealed deck building process here? Talk to me a little bit about how you're going to be working this out.
Usually goes into curve, and then it usually goes into cards that I like, and then it goes into I like all of them, and then it's kind of like usually more than 2 colors. Usually less than 5.
More than 2, less than 5.
But
that's a pretty good place to be.
Yeah. I'm leaning towards black in this set because the black looks insane.
I think that the black cards are also the best.
Yeah.
At a glance, I lean towards black being the best color. So notable here, we got a Nyx.
This card is insane.
Whoa, Strider, hello. So these are the rares. We got some commons and uncommons filling it up. Notable uncommons so far. I like this Enemy of Enlightenment. That card's been pretty impressive on Arena over the last little bit.
This card is better than this card, but yeah.
Yeah, at a glance, I thought this card was like not that good, but I have actually been impressed with it. Relatively.
It is good. I will put it in my deck.
Yeah, for sure.
But this card is better than this.
Yeah,
card.
I do quite like the Discordant Priest. Of course, you're gonna have to stick with me. Obviously, a lot of the actual cards are so new that I'm not 100% on names yet. So such is the way of pre-release and all that. All right, so just moving along. Where are we looking at so far? What are you liking so far? This is what, 3 packs in? Or this is 2 packs.
This is 2. This is the third one.
Right, so
I'm leaning towards black.
We got a really good black rare.
I'm not just playing this card at all.
Yeah, 7-mana 5/5 that basically doesn't have any text is like just not where you want to be. I mean, 7-mana cards are fine in sealed. It's sealed, but probably not a huge fan of that one.
Oh, I love this card.
Yes, absolutely. Gotta read this one. Protean Thaumaturge. Protean Thaumaturge is a super cool card. I think it's actually very powerful as well.
Dude, you get the Kiora beats the Sea God.
Oh yeah,
and then
Kiora beats the Sea Gods.
Yeah,
8/8 Krakens. That seems really sweet. So we're just lining out our colored spells. It looks like we have most white cards currently, and our white cards actually do look pretty good. 2 copies of Dreadful... oh my gosh, I can't remember the second word. Dreadful Apathy. I knew it was something like that.
Yeah.
I was going to say Dreadful Apparition, but I knew that was wrong. Dreadful Apathy seems pretty appealing so far, and this is halfway through the sealed pool, so...
Yeah.
Things are looking pretty promising here. Looking for some more bombies here to really round it out, obviously.
Satyr,
hello.
This card's neat.
Ooh, Hackdos.
I won't say it's good.
Hackdos the Unseen, okay.
I will say it's neat.
The Unscarred, excuse me.
It's a random... I like randomness, so that's dope. But it's a 6/1, so it's like a True Name Nemesis, but like a little less upside.
Yeah, it's certainly a little less upside. Red, white is really a relatively large cost. It makes it...
It's a large downside, yeah.
Pretty much unsplashable. Obviously, it's going to be really good in your red-white deck, and it's certainly a reason to be red and white, but, potentially is not exactly if you aren't red white, it's probably not going.
Timurit's really good.
Deck. Oh, Timurit is an excellent uncommon. Timurit, chosen from death. All right, going into pack number 5 here. Of course, everybody does get a special pre-release promo rare. In case you aren't aware, when you come to a pre-release, you get a pre-release promo rare. So he's going to have essentially 7 rares in his pool, and obviously Temple of Malice, not the biggest sealed bomb here or anything, but it's going to be a nice one for constructed.
Neither
for sure.
is Idyllic Tutor.
Yeah, Idyllic Tutor, kind of a brick, unfortunately.
Yeah.
More white cards keep flowing though, that's for sure.
They do.
Yeah, this white red might not be as far out of the plan as we may have initially thought. Ooh, we got a sweet copy of
Caliphate.
Caliphate.
Judge. Caliphate.
Caliphate. Sure. However you're supposed to pronounce it.
I mean, like, it's a 3-mana power devotion. It's a taxer.
With the tax. Yeah, it's a pretty reasonable. It's a 3-mana 2/3 with some upside.
Yeah.
You know, it gets bigger and it's slightly harder to remove than normal, so totally reasonable card. Unfortunately, Idyllic Tutor looks like kind of a brick here. This is the last pack, so we'll have to see.
Tentacle.
Ooh, got a tentacle token. Nice. All right. Ooh, so what's the rare?
This card.
Foil Final Death. That's a good one.
A Ternica.
Ooh, this card
Prone
is
Veteran.
nice.
What's this card do?
Well, that's a reader. Yeah.
Attacks, untap another target creature you control on a turn. That creature has base power 4/4, gains indestructible. Neat. And has Vigilance. I like Vigilance.
Yeah. Put your rares up here, James. This is the rare pile. This is the rare line. This is the line of rares. Come on, we had a thing going.
We did. What happened to us?
Yeah, Ternica, a Crone Veteran. That one looks quite good to me.
Yeah, so maybe I'm playing black-white because I think this black is good.
Foil Final Death certainly helps.
Yeah.
The black kind of getting there at the end for sure.
Another Final Death.
Second copy of Final Death. Are those the only 2 Final Deaths you have? Or
Yeah.
You looking at extra removal?
Let me look at my removal. But Final Death.
Yeah, looking at your amount of removal is usually a pretty good determiner
good.
of what you're supposed to do in a sealed format and all that.
Card's pretty medium.
Just doing some thinking.
Yeah. What's in this one?
So it looks like you pulled out 2 Final Death, which of course are just 5 mana, exile target creature at instant speed.
Absolutely.
Can't really
fine.
go wrong with that. And you also pulled out this Venomous Hierophant, which is a 4 mana 3/3 with Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, you get to put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. So why'd you pull out? These two kind of stand out as sort of obvious, but this one.
This was not the card I thought it was.
Not the card you thought it was. that tracks.
I thought it was the other Gorgon that when it escapes, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and on ETB, opponent sacrifices non-Gorgon creature.
Oh, that card's insane. Yeah,
that card's really good.
Yeah, that card's really insane. So,
yeah,
that's not quite as good. I was curious why you pulled that one out. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that one. I do think the card's certainly playable.
Oh yeah, we can stop talking about it though.
probably, yeah.
What's in here? What's the? Oh, this one.
Looking through the white cards, Dreadful Apathy pulled out here. Dreadful Apathy, of course, 3 mana enchantment. Enchanted creature cannot attack or block, and you pay 3 mana to exile the enchanted creature. So certainly a pretty sweet piece of removal as well. So it looks like we're looking at double Final Death, double Dreadful Apathy. That's pretty appealing, absolutely. Yeah. Triple Dreadful Apathy, as a matter of fact. That's a pretty good start to a sealed deck.
Yeah.
Toss a couple of rares on there, and you're probably doing it.
See, are any of these double costed? This guy is, but he's
think about potential splashes.
Yeah.
Potential splashes seem pretty appealing.
What about this? Medium. This guy's good. Okay, so there's one double splash I would consider for this deck, or double colored deck, or card, whatever.
What's the double colored card?
Timurit.
Be considering. Timurit Calls to Death.
Because he's like pretty
chosen for death. Chosen from death. Excuse me.
Pretty insane.
Yeah, Timurit Chosen from Death. For those of you who are not aware, of course, because it is a new set. Timurit's toughness. It's black for a 2-star. Its toughness is equal to your devotion to black. And for 2 mana, 1 and a black, you can exile up to 2 target cards from graveyards. You gain 1 life for each creature card exiled this way. So exiling cards from graveyards, obviously super relevant in this format, with escape being a very key mechanic. And there's a lot of graveyard play because of escape existing. And, you know, just gaining some extra life is not irrelevant either, so certainly pretty relevant. Taking a look at the blue, anything stand out to you in blue?
Not really. I'm looking for, like, escape cards, and the only thing I see is Sleep of the Dead. Otherwise, I have, like, no playable escape cards.
Sleep of the Dead, of course, being just a card that taps some creatures. Doesn't look particularly playable to me. And, yeah, what appears to be a relatively weak blue pool at a quick flip through there. Green look a little better by chance?
It's a double green escape, which I don't know if I can afford.
Just giving a flip through, I see a Plummet. Of course, Plummet, a staple. Thinking about...
Oh, this one...
Yeah, the Loathsome
really
Chimera,
medium.
which is a 3-mana 4/1 that can... Loathsome Chimera, excuse me, which is a 3-mana 4/1. That's all of its text on its front side, but it can escape for 5 mana and by exiling 3 other cards from your graveyard. And I suppose that this is the first time we've actually taken a look at an escape card, but we've been looking at it. So escape is the new mechanic from Theros Beyond Death. Escape says escape, and then there's a cost. So you can pay that cost while it is in your graveyard, and the escape cost is always a mana cost accompanied by exiling some number of cards from your graveyard. So example, this Chimera must escape for 5 mana and exiling 3 other cards from your graveyard, and then you get to recast it, and they often come with some bonuses when you're escaping them from your graveyard. So for example, Loathsome Chimera escapes with a +1/+1 counter on it. So pretty bread and butter 3-mana 4/1 creature here, and pretty normal. It's also articulated very well on this Voracious Typhon, which is a 4-mana 4/4 that escapes as a 7-mana 7/7. So it escapes for 7 mana, exiling 4 other cards with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. So you're getting a 4-mana 4/4 at base, and then you can play it as a 7-mana 7/7 later in the game. So certainly pretty valuable.
Just to point out, escape does not exile itself or anything.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very, very, very important that escape does not exile itself afterwards, so you can continue escaping as the game goes on and just keep accruing value as long as you have enough time to do that. And the Woe Strider, of course, is another powerful escape engine, and
that's escape too, right?
Probably going to be looking to abuse.
Yeah. So I think I'm just black-white because I think the rest of my pool sucks.
The rest of the pool, nothing too appealing in the Teamer Shard.
No. So I think it's time for me to go home because I didn't open an Uro. And I think that's what I said on camera yesterday.
Yeah, I think I do vaguely remember that as well. Yeah, so
it's media. 3-mana 2/1 flyer, maybe.
Yeah, Scavenging Harpy, pretty reasonable. It's 3-mana 2/1 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, it exiles a card from an opponent's graveyard. Pretty reasonable. It's a 3-mana 2/1 flyer with some upside. The upside's actually pretty relevant in this format. So, but at the end of the day, it's a 3-mana 2/1 flyer. It's slightly downgraded Windrake.
Yeah.
Of course, when you're looking for cards to put in your deck, it's a card that you can put in your deck.
Funeral Rites is good. It's a sign or what's it? It's not Sign Blood. It's Read the Bones.
Read the Bones.
Exactly. You draw 2, lose 2, and then you put 2 cards in your library to feel escape cards.
Yeah, and then you mill 2. So instead of getting the Scry 2 from Read the Bones, you get to mill 2. So potentially better than Read the Bones in this particular limited format with all of the escape cards floating around. So we got a couple of those coming in. Obviously, just some curve filler getting put in here. We got the 2-mana 2/1s that create a 0/1 goat when they die. We got the Venomous Hierophant that we talked way too much about earlier. It's 4-mana 3/3 with Death Touch that mills you for 3. So all in all, not too bad. Ooh, we got a goat token to go with our Discordant Piper.
To go with Woe Strider.
To go with Woe Strider. Of course. I forgot about the synergy between Woe Strider and Discordant Piper. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Obviously got our Dreadful Apathies going in.
I don't know if I put all 3 in. this is probably good enough to go in.
Triumphant Surge, of course, destroy target creature
Yeah.
with power 4 or greater, and you gain 3 life as instant speed. Certainly a removal spell that you're going to be happy to put in your sealed deck pretty much all the time. Power 4 or greater creatures. It's not going to deal with all of the problems you have. There's some pesky uncommons that ring a bell that have less than 4 power, but for the most part, 4 power is going to deal with the problem that you have, and of course with a couple final attempts to be able to clean things up. Feeling pretty good about that.
Don't know how I feel about this card. I don't think this is good in sealed formats or almost any.
Flicker of Fate's an interesting one,
Yeah.
for sure. It's one of those cards that I could easily see being very good in this format, just based on how things play out. But usually those effects are more or less take them or leave them, and sealed particularly. But it's certainly one of those cards that you should keep an eye on in your sealed pool, because you could easily take a look down at your sealed pool and think to yourself, wow, this has a lot of modes on it in this deck.
Yeah.
So looks like Heliod's Punishment going to make your way into the deck. Heliod's Punishment, one of the more interesting and wordier cards in this deck. It's a new take on a pacifism, for sure. So I'm sure we've got it up on screen for you, but it allows you to basically turn something off for 4 turns. It's essentially get that out of here for 4 turns is what it's going to do.
You know what? The third Dreadful Apathy is just better than that.
All right. Third Dreadful Apathy finds its way in.
And this is just Dreadful Apathy with downside.
More or less.
Yeah.
Dreadful Apathy is obviously going to be a very powerful effect in a sealed format. So.
Yeah, and this says loses all abilities, but I'm not really too worried about that.
If you're putting the 3 Dreadful Apathies in your deck, I can safely say I agree with that choice.
Yeah. Don't want that one. How many cards is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Where did the other cards go?
Looking at 16.
Yeah,
you have more cards. Where'd they go? Did you put them in this pile?
Where did Big Boy Vigilance Man go?
Big Boy Vigilance Man?
There he
There's
is.
Big Boy Vigilance Man.
That's 17.
Tarnika, the Akroan Veteran, of course. Going to be probably one of the best cards in your deck as an on-color rare. It usually tends to be. It's going to be pumping pretty much every creature you have in play here, and also, making them indestructible. Certainly not to be
Not a small deal.
not a joke. Obvious.
This
Absolutely
goat
not a
can
joke.
become a threat.
Oh yeah, the fact that you have goat tokens is actually pretty insane with Terramika.
Yeah. So this 17, 23 is the number.
Yeah, you're looking for 23 playable.
17
So we're
is a land thing.
gonna have to scrounge out some extra cards here. 23-17, the normal split
Yeah.
between spells and lands that you're gonna want to make. Flipping through just the extra cards, you pulled out obviously the good ones that you're interested in putting in your deck, and now we're mostly just gonna look to fill out our curve and find the cards that we're going to be okay putting in our deck. So we found a Omen of the Sun, 3 mana enchantment. It has flash, as do all of the omens.
Yeah.
When it enters the battlefield, you make 2 1/1 creatures, and you can pay 3 mana and sacrifice it to scry 2 as you can.
You also
with all
gain
of the
2 life
omens.
with
Oh,
Omen
you
of
also
the Sun.
gain 2 life, excuse me.
Which
Thank you
could
very
be
much.
important.
Yeah. And then we took an Improbable Will, which is just target creature gets +2/+1.
Indomitable.
Indomitable Will, excuse me. Target creature gets +2/+1. All other creatures you control get +1/+1. And then we have a Temple Thief, which is a 2/2 that cannot be blocked by enchantment creatures or creatures that are enchanted. So 2/2 with some upside,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
but
6,
mostly
7, 8,
curve filler.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Looking at 20 so far, so we're going to need to scrounge for a couple more here.
Well, looks like we're putting these in.
So Nyx Bloom
And that one.
Marauder, it's a 4 mana 4/3. It's an enchantment creature, that's its only text. And then Aspect of Lamprey. Lamprey. Aspect of Lamprey, enchanted creature has it's an aura, excuse me. Enchanted creature has lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent discards 2 cards. So it's mostly a different take on a Mind Rot, and then we just slapped in a 3 mana 2/4 with no abilities. It's an enchantment creature as well. The Nyx Bloom Courser. Nyx Bloom Courser, excuse me.
Deciding if this or that is better.
Yeah, looking at 23 cards now, so now we're just going to take a flick through, see if there's anything we want. Sentinel's Eyes, of course, 1 mana. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has vigilance. It escapes for a white and exiling 2 other cards from the graveyard. Certainly an option that's available to you. Obviously, we're mostly looking at replacement level effects here. Yeah, just thinking.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So this This pool looks pretty interesting to me. So how do you think that games with this are gonna play out? Like, what's your main plan here with this archetype? You think he gets more aggressive, more controlling, somewhere in the middle?
It's got to be somewhere in the middle. I wish I had more top end. I just have this Enemy of Enlightenment, which is kind of disappointing. No real big like bombs. Like this Terranika is probably gonna be the one that carries me to victory most of the time.
Yeah.
Like I can get in there with 2-1s and like whatever.
Yeah, the 2-1 beats plan. It really looks to be mostly where you're going backed up with some removal spells to try and get your 2-1 beaters through.
Yeah. And so it's like a little heavy on removal. Yeah. There's 3 and 2 here.
Quite a bit of removal is certainly the strong point.
This has Death Touch, which is sweet.
Yeah, a lot of removal is the strong point of this pool. Absolutely. So, between triple Dreadful Apathy, double Final Death, you're going to be able to kill the things that need to get killed, hopefully. And, a couple Funeral Rites means that hopefully you can find the way to get to them.
This guy Death Touch is indestructible? That's sweet.
Well, that's really sweet, yeah.
I think I'm kind of heavy on spells, so I will not play the Sentinel Eyes.
Alrighty.
So I have a lot of just like actual spells where I wish I had more creatures, but I don't think the rest of my creatures are good enough to put in here. And Constellation's a mechanic that I'm not going to be triggering.
Yeah, Constellation is...
Yeah.
It looks like our deck does not have any particular care for Constellation. Notably, the deck's a little lacking on Theros mechanics in general.
Yeah.
We got a lot of creatures that you could see in any set, essentially. But obviously, they've got their Theros Beyond Death Flare. This deck looks pretty sweet to me. It looks quite fun.
Hopefully. That's the plan.
If I'm being honest. I would certainly love to play it. But I'll be in the booth, of course, watching you play it.
What an idiot.
Watching you from afar. So
yeah.
These are the white cards that are currently not in the deck.
So I think this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, so now we gotta think about mana. So what do you think as far as mana base? Oh, 2 plains in a swamp, huh? You're about 17 cards short of a deck there. So
17 lands. Thinking like 10-7 for swamps to plains, because I think we're way more black heavy than we are white heavy.
Totally reasonable.
So I think that's what I'm going to do. And you will not stop me.
Alright, 10-7 it is. So with that, I think we're going to have James put 10 islands and... it's not islands, 10 swamps and 7 plains.
That's a good point. Island's the best card in Magic. I need island stat.
Yeah, so I think we're going to have 10 swamps and 7 plains going into the deck. And with that, I think that we're going to have James's deck all set, and we're going to be back with James for round number 1. So the building won't take very long. We'll be back. We're going to leave you guys with the time machine until then. Make sure you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be back for the very first rounds of Theros Beyond Death Limited. You'll be able to see live. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back soon.
See you all night.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the third and final round of Pioneer here at Paradise Games. We got Brad and James, both of the winners of the last 2 matches, facing off now in the feature match for the third and final round for the undefeated trophy. Let's see how this plays out. We got Blue-Green Eldrazi versus Green-Red Blitz. This one in theory is definitely a little puzzling to me. So I can easily see James kind of just taking over the board state with too many large creatures for Brad to be able to effectively punch through. But I could also easily see Brad just having pump spell after pump spell after pump spell after pump spell in order to just keep getting over these creatures and James eventually running out of relevant threats. So we'll see how this goes. I think that the Stubborn Denials seem pretty good in this matchup for James, as Brad's probably going to be forced into trying to get his creatures through in combat, so we'll see how it goes. I also think that potentially Brad could just not have enough pump spells that pump toughness. He's got a lot of +3, +1, +4, +2-esque effects, but without First Strike or like Temur Battle Rage gives Double Strike, for example. His creatures are probably just going to be trading with the large Eldrazi, and that's usually not as good. You're essentially 2-for-1ing yourself if you don't have a Season of Growth or something, so Here is a Troll. Of course, it's going to be a 2-mana 3/3, so bigger than what James is up to currently, although I expect that to change going into James's next turn. He's got that Lovestruck Beast hanging out. James does have the ability to turn it into an Elk. It would turn it into a 4/4 Elk, of course, but it would remove the ability for it to gain hexproof, but I doubt James really cares about the hexproof of Brad's creatures so much in this matchup. He really doesn't have that much interaction for creatures in his deck. It's mostly Stubborn Denial and, creatures from James. So here is Thought Not Seer. Here goes Brad's hand. It's got a couple of mountains to start. I see a Temur Battle Rage under those mountains as James makes us work through it slowly. Here's a Season of Growth. Interesting that we saw Brad deploy the creature first. Gore Clan Rampager, and then a second Temur Battle Rage are the other two cards in hand. So this is an interesting choice. If I were James, I'd probably lean towards taking either the Season of Growth or the Gore Clan Rampager. Leaving him with double Temur Battle Rage is pretty scary against our deck because we really want to be blocking with our larger creatures, but Gore Clan Rampager +4/+4 is definitely big enough to threaten your creatures, and also the double Temur Battle Rage don't do anything on their own. So looks like James agrees Gore Clan Rampager is going to hit the bin, and there's Titan Strength, the draw from Brad. That's a pretty good one now, because I bet James is going to be pretty tempted to block, but looks like Brad's just going to go ahead, play the Season of Growth, ship the turn. He's not willing to trade the Troll plus a Titan Strength for the Thought Not Seer, interestingly enough. All right, let's see what James finds himself up to now. He could also theoretically try and tick this Blast Zone up to 2 at some point. That seems very effective against what Brad's got going on. CMC 2 tends to be the kind of the sweet spot for all of Brad's creatures. So here's an attack for 4. Brad's just, didn't want to offer the trade then, not willing to offer the trade now. Gonna go ahead and take the 4 down to 15. James will ship it back. So we could see potential extra counter going on. James has a Reality Smasher in his hand. Wonder what else he's got going on. I wonder if we're holding up a Stubborn Denial or something similar here, along with just shipping the turn with potential Blast Zone threat, or if we're mostly just on empty here and looking to hit another land to be able to really cast our threats. Notably, James could have deployed a Lovestruck Beast, so that's got to be pinging on Brad's radar that he must have something, and as a matter of fact, I talked myself to it, so James must have something here, and it's likely not just put counter on Blast Zone, although it easily could be just put counter on Blast Zone. That does seem quite good here, so I expect to see no blocks here from James. And James is probably just going to be preparing himself to take like 10 this turn or something, assuming that Brad had drawn any pump spell. Certainly far from ideal, but looks like that's what we got. So here is a 1/1 jumping in front of the Troll. Looks like Brad just says, okay. Interesting turn here. And then James puts a counter on the Blast Zone. So sure enough, that was all that was going on here. So here is activate Blast Zone. Brad's going to cycle a Temur Battle Rage off the Season of Growth in response, and then James will just be able to get in for 4 uncontested here. He strip mines himself here, and he is missing land drops, so James is definitely banking on Brad not having anything relevant here, looking for Brad to be missing on creatures and the like. But bad news for James. Here comes Busara Tower Archer. Busara Tower Archer, of course, is a creature, so no good news for James. James looks like he's still missing on lands. Oko, Thief of Crowns in hand. I see an Elvish Mystic as well. Looks like he's going to attack for 4. Brad happily takes it down to 7. Here comes Oko, Thief of Crowns. I expect that we're just going to make a food this turn. Looks like we will ship the turn back over to Brad. So Brad's going to need to string together some pretty impressive spells here to be able to find lethal in a timely manner. Of course, James representing lethal on board now, so if Brad doesn't have an attack for 20 this turn, he actually can't make it. And with the Busara Tower Archer, we need to give 8 power and then cast Temur Battle Rage to be able to get there. I see Rimrock Knight, Titan Strength, and Colossus. That does make 8, but does he have enough mana? We've got 2 mana from the Collision Colossus, 1 mana from both spells, so that costs 4 mana, means that he's missing 1 land to be able to kill James this turn, which is not great for Brad. So if we're 1 land away from being able to kill James, what's our best choice? It looks like we're probably just going to have to pass the turn and try and make a profitable block of some kind. Potentially go after the Thought-Knot Seer, be able to draw a card for our troubles. So here's a land from James. Oh, he's got a Thought-Knot Seer pulled to the front of his hand. That one seems quite good. Be able to take away a Temur Battle Rage, and that'll end up basically eliminating any ways that Brad really has of killing you here in the near future. So I think we'll see that come down. And oh, Questing Beast. Oh, Questing Beast looks much better to me. And yep, that's plenty good. That'll pack it up for Brad. So James manages to find lethal, but he was really close to dead there. Just a single land would have been enough for Brad to kill him, but of course, didn't have it, so we'll see James take the first game in this match. Let's take a look at the sideboards. Brad has 4 Destructive Revelry, 3 Girl Spellbreaker, 2 Feed the Clan, 2 Scavenging Ooze, 1 Gore Clan Rampager, 1 Collision Colossus, and 2 Lava Coils. So what stands out to me immediately, the Lava Coils seem great. They're going to deal with some bigger creatures like Thought-Knot Seer and the like, but also when they're on the play, they'll probably just get pointed at Mana Dorks somewhat frequently and try and slow James down, really. The Gruul Spellbreakers don't seem particularly good. The Scavenging Ooze, The extra Gore Clan Rampager seems excellent in this matchup. The +4/+4, I mentioned the toughness boost being really important in the matchup, so I think I like that one quite a bit. So I would expect to see the Gore Clan Rampager, the Lava Coils, and that's probably all that really stands out to me. Maybe Brad's got some stinkers that he wants to bring in some other stuff for, but those are the ones that I like. Let's take a look at James. He's got 3 Reclamation Sage, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, a Mystical Dispute, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Negate, 1 Scavenging Ooze, and 2 Feed the Clan. So I think I like the negates from James. Like I said, we're probably just creatures-wise, we're going to be bigger than Brad. So if we can get our creatures into combat and prevent Brad from pump spelling them, we're likely going to win those combats. And Brad's, I believe, going to be forced into some of those combats somewhat frequently. So I think that seems like a pretty good choice to me. The Reclamation Sages are an option. We saw Season of Growth out of Brad. I don't love it, but if we've got cards to take out, I'm pretty into that. The 2 Feed the Clans are other ones that stand out to me as totally doable. Gaining 10 life seems pretty relevant in this matchup. You know, if Brad overextends into a Feed the Clan and ends up dying on the backswing, that seems like something that could easily happen. So it's going to be rough for Brad to overextend into the open mana like that, but it doesn't seem entirely impossible. So, you know, so sometimes Brad's just going to look down at his hand. James is going to have no blocker. He's just going to turn his creature sideways and hope that he gets it through. So we'll see how that ends up working out for him. And of course, James does still have the Stubborn Denials in his deck that are really going to shine in this matchup, I think. The single mana negates are going to be really, really good because, you know, just in the nature of them being turned on, it's going to mean that James is likely winning combat. So let's take a look at the opening hands here for game number 2. Brad's got, looks like reasonable hand, and looks like James is going to have to ship his back. Hand looked pretty good, but I'm not certain it had any lands, so I think that one's going to have to go. Brad's hand, on the other hand, looks like it's got a Rimrock Knight, Forest, I see a Stomping Ground, Temur Battle Rage, Lava Coil. Looks like a pretty good one. Yeah, Brad's hand looks great all around, honestly. It's got a Glade Cover Scout in there as well. Just looks like everything that Brad wants to be doing over there. I think he might be missing, you know, 1 or 2 pump spells. The Temur Battle Rage looks slightly out of place, but all things considered, I like the Lava Coil. We've got Glade Cover Scout and a Lava Coil lined up for a potential, you know, Elvish Mystic, or if Brad decides that he wants to save the Lava Coil for bigger threats, then that's a totally viable option as well. All right, let's take a look at James's 6 here. Hopefully you can find something more reasonable than the old no-lander of last hand. I see Stubborn Denial. That one stands out. Blast Zone. That one looks like no good either. I didn't get a great look at the rest of the cards, but assuming James's frustrated handshake there, I'm going to guess that Blast Zone might have been the only land in that hand, and that he just didn't have any colored sources, so gonna have to ship that one back. Down to 5 now is James, and I really like Brad's hand against a 5 from James. The Lava Coil looks excellent. Temur Battle Rage is, you know, not excellent on its own, but assuming we have any help from the top of our deck, it's gonna get there. We have plenty of lands. our draw is always going to be functional, and that seems pretty good against a opponent mulliganing to 5. So let's see how James's 5-card hand looks. Definitely going to be looking for something special here. There's no Eldrazi Temples in the format, so those really, explosive turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer-esque draws are nowhere to be seen in this deck, unfortunately. Of course, James really wishes he could find something like that, because that's really what you're looking for on a 5, something just absurd, a nut draw, explosive, and but it looks like he's just gonna have to settle for an okay hand. I see a Gilded Goose at the front of the hand there, so feeling all right. Oh, there's Oko. Speaking of nuts, he's goose into Oko probably, and we've seen this one many a time, so we'll see if Brad is gonna be able to find a way to deal with it. Another Teamer Battle Rage off the top. Definitely not quite what Brad was looking for. Here's an attack for 1. James, not willing to risk his goose, will just take it. I expect that had James blocked, he would have just said okay, that takes 1 and made the same play. But also, I'm sure Brad definitely considered lava coiling the goose there instead of what he did. He might regret not doing that here once he sees this Oko come down. So Oko's gonna hit the field. It'll plus to make a food. We'll see what Brad wants to do about that. He could just leave the Oko at bay and try and go at James's face directly, try and have set up for a couple really explosive turns, but it doesn't look like Brad's hand has enough pump spells to be able to realistically do that. So I'm not crazy about that line. I think Brad might just need to send some damage at the Oko here and try and take it out. Brad notably also has a single red mana. That's really awkward. So with only 1 red mana, we can only cast a single card in our hands. Looks like Brad does elect that he has to send the damage at Oko. Rimrock Knight is going to be his 1 spell for turn. Definitely not quite what Brad wants to be seeing. We'll see what James elects to do with his turn. He's got the Oko Blast Zones land for turn. I think he's probably going to be making that food into an elk. I also see a Heart of Kirin in his hand. That one looks pretty good to me. Odds are we're going to be tossing some blockers in front of these creatures to try and protect our Oko, and we're going to expect at least one of these combats to end not super profitably, but it looks like he goes for the +2 to make the food. All right, here comes the Heart of Kirin. Heart of Kirin, once again, probably going to be tossed in front of something, trying to make a profitable block happen. Here's another Basara Tower Archer off the top for Brad. Not what he's looking for. He really wants to find pump spells, and this is one of the problems of decks like these, is sometimes you just draw the wrong half of your deck, Teamer Battle Rage and all creatures, and it looks really awkward. So, all right, looks like we've got 5 damage getting sent at Oko, 1 at James. So Brad fearlessly attacking. Obviously, he's got he's got enough pump spells to be able to get him through this combat profitably for sure. So let's see how this goes. Looks like Heart of Kirin has been declared as a blocker, and Gilded Goose, I think, might also be blocking the Gladecover Scout. I think I like this block from James, assuming that that is what's happening. I'm not entirely certain that those are the blocks, but we'll see what Brad elects to do. So Teamer Battle Rage will take out the oh, okay, I see. So Heart of Kirin on Basara Tower Archer was the only block. Brad then elected to Teamer Battle Rage the Rimrock Knight to kill the Oko by giving it double strike, and that was the only block from James. So James took the one from the Gladecover Scout, not willing to risk his goose, but the Oko is down, so Brad managed to trade in a Teamer Battle Rage to kill an Oko, and I think he's feeling pretty good about that given the state of things, although I think James might have another Oko in his hand, which is definitely bad news for Brad, given all of the hard work that Brad just went through to get that first one off the field. And I expect we'll see an elk on this turn. So James managed to get a pump spell out of Brad's hand. James going to go ahead and crew his Heart of Kirin. Attack for 7. Oh boy, James is on the aggressive now. So he's up and ready to go. Gilded Goose still back to defend if it needs to. Here's a draw from Brad. It's Stomping Ground. Would have been helpful a couple turns ago, but it doesn't look great here. Brad really just needs to find pump spells, though admittedly the red mana source will probably help him cast a flurry of spells on a future turn, but he's already under immense pressure now from the Oko and the Heart of Kirin. I'm not entirely certain that he's going to be able to realistically find that time to cast all of those spells, especially given that the Stomping Ground will cost him 2 life. This is 7 points this turn and 10 points next turn when Oko makes the other food into an elk. This is a really tough spot. I mean, Brad cannot Lava Coil the Heart of Kirin. He could Lava Coil an elk to just get that thing out of the way. This is certainly one of the worst positions for this Lava Coil. It doesn't look excellent here, though. Admittedly, I think it would be quite good most of the time. So he's going to take the 2 damage from the Stomping Ground. Looks like he's got no effects before combat, so we're just going to see him go ahead and attack. So here's these attacks. Looks like I didn't quite see where they were declared, but I definitely saw that the Glade Cover Scout was at James. I'm not certain if the Rimrock Knight is at Oko or at James, but it looks like Rimrock Knight is at Oko. So Rimrock Knight at Oko. We'll see if James wants to fire up a block of any kind or what's going on here. If he decides to fire up the Heart of Kirin and block the Oko, he will end up trading his Heart of Kirin most likely. And this is the block I actually like the most. Just Goose on Rimrock Knight. All right. You're going to need trample or whatever, but more than likely, this is just going to be okay, and you're going to lose your Goose, but that's definitely the permanent you least want on this battlefield. So I quite enjoy that block from James. And then here's Brad with a second main Busara Tower Archer. No Lava Coil still, so certainly an interesting choice. So James going to go ahead and crack the Blast Zone that's on 1. He's going to remove the Glade Cover Scout, although I do think that James needs to tap another mana for that, if I'm not mistaken. I think that ability costs 3. Yep, there we go. Looks like he's catching up now. So James has made his food token into an elk, and now he's got what looks to be a nearly lethal attack lined up. We'll just see how hard he really wants to go. I would expect to see all of these just start rumbling. I mean, what's the worst thing that could really happen? I mean, we're probably attacking into a pump spell of some kind, but looks like it's just going to be the 2, leaving an elk back. I'm not crazy about this. I think I like, forcing the lethal attack and forcing Brad's hand. Now Brad can kind of just say okay if he wants to and end up having 2 attackers next turn if he ends up with an absurd pile of spells in his hand. I think Brad's still going to be forced to Temur Battle Rage the Busara Tower Archer and try and trade with a Heart of Kirin, which feels miserable, obviously, but I just don't think we really have much of a way of beating it, and going to 2 here feels kind of like a death sentence, but we'll see if Brad manages to piece that together. Theoretically, if he can get the Oko off the field and kill an elk, there's only 1 creature that's able to crew the Heart of Kirin, so that's a potential plan for Brad, but here is Temur Battle Rage on the Busara Tower Archer. That's what I mentioned. It looks like that's going to make the trade. So Brad will take the 3 down to 6. I didn't catch what the draw was there for Brad, but it's it's Forest. That is not good news. So I think at this point, Brad is certainly forced to Lava Coil a 3/3 elk. I don't think we really have any options. So there's the Lava Coil, the 3/3 elk. Looks like Brad's willing to get aggressive. Attack for 3 at the Oko. Elvish Mystic, the draw for James. He's got a couple of those now. So I think James is going to be more than happy to deploy those. Here's a food token. The food token, surprisingly relevant here. Despite, his life total not being under any duress immediately, it's certainly quite good at making sure that he can't end up losing a race at some point. 2 forests, the only cards in hand for Brad, means that spells the end of the game. James, congratulations on running it up here at Pioneer at Paradise Games. Well done, my friend. We saw him clean some house with Oko and making a real case for why Oko is not a reasonable card. So it's definitely always enjoy watching Oko clean up some people in every format as per usual. So good job, Oko. Well done winning the game once again. So with that, Alrighty, welcome back everyone to round number 2 here, Monday Night Modern at Paradise Games. Joining me now is James.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me, James.
Hey, welcome. You looked lonely.
I feel lonely. no longer lonely. So, we've got a little bit of Blue Moon Mirror.
Great.
Here, you showed up just in time for the Blue Moon Mirror.
I can't wait for these fellas to board out their blood moons.
Yeah, no joke, yeah. Alright, so got a little bit of Blue Moon versus Fairy Moon. So there are some differences here in these two decks. We got a bunch of fairies, and in fact the Kiki Jiki combo kill on John's side, whereas Nathan's just playing the more traditional controlling build with like Thing in the Ice.
Yeah, I mean, like, it could go either way. I'm more inclined to say that, I don't know, maybe John has more of a chance. I think he has more creatures inside of his deck.
He has significantly more creatures, yeah.
So I feel like he's more at an advantage now.
I think
with
I
his
tend to
flash
agree.
fairies and everything.
The Flash Fairies seem quite good in this matchup. And look, James, the chat loves you.
Everyone loves me.
Yeah. So
I'm like Raymond.
I think you're like Ross from Friends.
Oh my god, I love David Schwimmer. Have
Yeah.
you seen that schnoz, my dude?
He's great. Yeah, exactly. You're like the Bellingham.
It's like a built-in motorboat.
You're the Bellingham David Schwimmer. He's not that cool.
David Schwimmer?
Or James.
No, definitely David Schwimmer.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm
Not
amazing.
as cool as James. All right, a little bit of action going on here. We got just a couple of Serum Visions over from John, and Nathan's doing a whole lot of nothing so far. James is not as cool as David Schwimmer.
I hope he's...
What do you have to say to Queen Elsa of Arendelle?
I hope he's
Who says that
referencing David Schwimmer and not David Pierce.
All right. So,
Who is this woman?
who is this woman? I don't know.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Looks like we're resolving a fetch on the end step here.
Yeah, and just spending 8 years shuffling? Come on, Nathan. We had an entire rant about David Schwimmer in the time it took you to shuffle your deck.
All right, moving on. Looks like he drew Island.
Oh, yeah, we know who Blonde and Bougie is. That could be none other than Danielle.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, it's obvious.
None other than Eye Candy herself.
Oh, the one. All right.
And you. That's the mystery woman.
I don't know who Queen Elsa of Arendelle is. Yeah, I'm not certain.
I haven't even seen Frozen.
You haven't seen Frozen?
No.
What? I know what we're doing after this.
Going home.
Also Danielle. All right, got it. Got it. So we've got Danielle and Danielle.
I'm gonna go on a limb here and say the chat will no longer like me.
Yeah, I think we should watch Frozen so that we can go see Frozen 2 together, because Frozen 1 is phenomenal. It's like really actually very good.
I hear that.
Yeah,
I just like don't watch movies that often.
It's very, very good. All right. So
100% honest review by Wandering Benser himself.
It's
like we're cracking this bed.
The Frozen movie party. Everyone in chat's invited to James's Frozen baptism.
Yo, who has Disney Plus?
We're gonna dunk him in some Idina Menzel. It's gonna be great.
What's been Cass's game? Like Serum Visions?
Yeah, and I got Nubtub the God has Disney Plus. Paradise Games has Disney Plus. Okay, okay.
God.
Frozen chocolate chip cookies? Man, I'm excited for this. This looks great.
You know, I'm okay with people not liking me because this party sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like not watching Frozen for 6 years is about to finally pay off in chocolate chip cookies. So like
in 6 years?
Sounds legendary. Easily.
I am so old.
Yeah, I know, right? Same. I was working at Kohl's in high school when Frozen came. It might be like more like 5. But you know,
probably wearing these same shorts.
Let's go. Alex, this is Maine. Clearly Wandering Fencer's paying more attention to this game than I am. I'm not entirely certain what's been happening so far. They've been
playing
commenting.
lands.
Yeah, I think some spells have gone slinged back and forth.
Ever since Seer Visions, we've seen lands.
Really? Is that?
Yeah.
all right. If you say so. Let's see. It looks like Nathan's presumably shipping the turn over to John, who's cracking a fetch.
Yeah.
If I had to guess,
Nathan
that's
has
where
2
we're
cards
at.
in his graveyard and has.
They've got to both
18.
be fetch lands. Yeah.
Well, he's at 18.
Why the hell did Nathan fetch Basic Mountain in this matchup? I think I saw him fetch Basic Mountain. That's puzzling.
Got to play around Blood Moon.
Yeah. Like, I just can't imagine fetching a Basic Mountain. And like maybe he needs red, but I just get a Steam Vents, right? Like, it's not like our life total's really under any duress. Ooh, she's going to turn Yo Basics into Snowlands.
That sounds great.
Yeah, that's definite financial upgrade.
That's an upgrade.
Yeah, you could make a business out of that. Here we see Nathan playing with some phenomenal Die Hard dice, which, if you missed our giveaway earlier, don't be scared. We will be going over the giveaway once more after round 3, so just hang on. You got plenty of time for giveaway later. So
You really had to do your promotion during Lightning Bolt?
all right, well, it was Lightning Bolt you. I mean, like, I don't know.
Snap Lightning Bolt?
Bolt, snap, bolt. Here we go. The Nathan Classic. All right. So this is pretty much the Nathan special in these mirrors. He is about Lightning Bolt you.
He is aggressively bolting.
He does it every time. Wandering Fencer. I'm talking to our floor reporter who's telling me we have no less than 4 lands controlled by each player. More than 11. So here is the classic Bolt Snap Bolt. John's gonna go ahead and Spell Stutter Sprite that second bolt. I'm feeling all right about that one. I mean, the Spell Stutter Sprite's basically just gonna trade 1-for-1 with a Snapcaster Mage. That doesn't happen very often.
And then we're back exactly where we were.
No, and then John's winning because Nathan Lightning Bolted him.
Yeah.
I believe. Until John dies. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Is this upstairs? Or is this a... I assume this has got to be a Spell Stutter Sprite. Oh my gosh, that's a Kiki Jiki in hand. He's got the nuts.
Oh my god, does John have a Lightning Bolt in his hand?
He does, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Update from the floor. I'm hearing something from the floor. Kiki Jiki is the Mirror Breaker. So...
The Mirror Breaker?
So yeah, so he's got to be good in the mirror. He's got to be good in the mirror.
Alright, just bolt each other's creatures, move on.
Yeah. Good talk. Shifts in the night. Bolt your Spell Starter Sprite. Bolt your Snapcaster Mage. All right, go.
You think next round we could get a green-black rock mirror?
We could have had a Grixis Death Shadow versus black-white Pox, I think. This round. I'm not certain it's Pox. It's one of black, white Pox or like Esper Control. All I saw was Thoughtseize, Lingering Souls, and some black and white lands. So like,
man, I love Lingering Souls.
Yeah, I'm about Lingering Souls for sure. All right, looks like End Step Archmage's Charm here. The Fairy Seer went ahead and did some digging for John. He's got a Kiki Jiki, a Brazen Borrower in his hand. One other card. I didn't get a good look at the other card, fortunately.
Let me tell you, John loves his Fairy Seer.
Oh yeah, John is about Fairy Seer. Oh, Mistbind Click. Hello, Champion of Fairy. We're gonna need to get this one on camera, or we're gonna need to get this one pulled up for the people at home.
Yes, please.
In case you're unaware what Mistbind Click
also
does.
for the people here.
Yeah, you tell me you don't know what Mistbind Click does?
I'm not a fairy professional. Will not touch.
Alrighty, welcome back everybody. We have successfully finished our deck creation here, and we are ready to begin round number 1 of the Theros Beyond Death pre-release at Paradise Games. I'm stoked to get some games going. We got blue-black here against white-black. We got a little bit of Ashiok, it appears, in our challenger Josh's deck, as it looks like James is going to take a quick mulligan here. He looked at 7 cards and not too happy with them, so we'll see if James is going to be able to manage to take down the powerful deck. Looks like Josh does have that Ashiok in his hand. I saw that from a quick glance there. Looks like it's going to be an uphill battle for James to be able to beat Ashiok and Nightmare Muse. We can see it on screen now. It is 5 mana Planeswalker with 5 loyalty. Its +1 is create a 2/3 blue and black Nightmare creature token with, whenever this creature attacks or blocks, each opponent exiles the top 2 cards of their library. Of course, 2 cards being a pretty big chunk in Sealed. -3, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then that player exiles a card from their hand, and a -7 with you may cast up to 3 face-up cards your opponents own from exile without paying their mana costs. So obviously a Planeswalker in basically any fashion is going to take over a game in Sealed, so we're going to have to see if James has the ability to tango with it here. As we see Planes come in from James, looks like he is on the draw. Second copy of Planes will be his decision for this turn. He'll pass the turn back over to Josh, who looks like he's got an effect on end step. He's going to flash in the Turtle. It's a 0/5 with flash. Riptide Turtle, I do believe, is the name of that one. Then we'll see a Swamp enter the battlefield for Josh. Given a think about what to do. Ooh, I think he has his other rare in his hand as well. I believe that is Astris. I think that's the name of it. The 4 mana 3/2 with Menace that exiles cards from, or that essentially factor fictions in a fun way. All right, so now we see James did manage to find his black mana, as he'll put in the 2 mana 2/1 that dies into a goat. So not a particularly overwhelming play here on the 3rd turn of the game, especially because he was lacking the black mana to be able to do that on the last turn. But Discordant Piper is at least somewhat of a clock in. Speaking of somewhat of a clock, here is that rare that I mentioned. This one is going to be very tough for James to beat if he does not have the appropriate answers. Obviously, we built James's deck, or I built James's deck with him. So it's certainly very powerful. So when it enters the battlefield, target opponent looks at the top 3 cards of your library and separates them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So this is certainly very fun. Looks like James is looking at Island, and I believe that is the blue rare that draws a card whenever you cast the first spell on your opponent's turn, but I'm not entirely certain. I can't get a great look at it. We'll have to see how James decides to do this. He's really giving this a think. He's going to give his opponent face down Island and face up Island, and yes, that is in fact the Hippocamp. The Breaching Hippocamp? No, it's not that one. Wave Crash Hippocamp, something along those lines. Of course, you're going to have to stick with me. The set has just been released, today. It was out on Arena yesterday, obviously. Wavebreak Hippocamp. Ha! I was right. Or at least very close. So, of course, it's a 3 mana 2/2. Oh, I think James got him. James got him so good. Oh, he put the Island and the Hippocamp face up and then an Island face down. That's so sick. I love that card so much. The face up, face down factor fiction piles are just so much fun to make. I think that James is going to be feeling like an absolute champion here. Manages to essentially stick his opponent with just an Island because he was too curious what the face down card would be. So, well played, James. Definitely thoroughly enjoyed that play. Oh man, this format's looking to be sweet. Although I think James is getting crushed in this game. Okay, here comes Ternica. Ternica, of course, me and James decided probably the best card in his deck. It's got quite a bit of an uphill battle here, looking at the face of all the rares that we know Josh has. Of course, he does have that Ashiok in his hand, so I think James is kind of just holding his breath and praying that there isn't a lot more problems coming, but got bad news for James. Here comes the Ashiok. So Ashiok's almost certainly just going to start plussing and making some nightmares, and James doesn't really have any good attacks, unfortunately. If he does start doing that, a 2/3 nightmare is a very big. It's even on this board with he's got the turtle to be able to block the 4/4 that Ternica could create. And he's just going to be able to, smack back with the Nightmare, of course, and start exiling cards from James's deck and, plussing towards an ultimate. Of course, Ashiok comes in and pluses 2/6, so obviously very powerful. As looks like Josh sends in 4/3. Of course, the card does have Menace, so James not willing to trade his Ternica for it. He will play his 5th land of the game, James going to have to go ahead and read Ashiok Nightmare Muse. It's going to be a lot of reading, of course, today, with everything going on. Obviously, production's going to be working round the clock, pulling up all of these cards for you at home, and mostly for me. So, I've done an amount of research myself. I believe I know most of the cards in this set at this point, but knowing most of the cards and being able to recognize them just by art and get all their titles exactly correct is difficult. Especially this set, a lot of the cards have a lot of really crazy titles and some wild names, so it's somewhat tough to get everything right every time. So all right, so now James in the tank here on his 6th turn of the game, looking to find a way to be able to beat this Ashiok Nightmare Muse. He's gonna need quite a bit of action. He's got a Dreadful Apathy in his hand, so he is going to start with Dreadful Apathy on the Riptide Turtle. Means that it will not be able to attack or block. So the Riptide Turtle getting shut off here. Dreadful Apathy, of course, you pay 3 mana to exile these things. Of course, Terranika does have Vigilance, so he does not need to tap it to attack with it. I do remember that much. And, of course, he is going to turn his 2/1 into a 4/4 with Indestructible. So now he's sending both of these at Ashiok. Josh does not have any great blocks, so I assume that he's going to go ahead and chump block the 4/4 to keep his Ashiok alive. Obviously, the Dreadful Apathy taking out the turtle means that he gets to do that. And when that Nightmare blocks, he will exile 2 cards, Swamp, going to the bin, along with, I'm not entirely certain what that one is at a quick glance with the glare. But it's in exile, so doubt it's going to matter too much. All right, here comes a draw from Josh. It is Swamp. Ashiok down to 3 loyalty now, so he's going to be doing his best to think about how he wants to progress from here. I expect another plus from Ashiok to make another Nightmare is likely going to be the plan, and then probably leave his rare at home and attempt to block the Terranika Crowan Veteran instead of, serving in for the 3 points of damage, which he did last turn. I was going to say that I wasn't a huge fan of the attack last turn for, it caused something exactly like the turtle getting taken out and then having to make some awkward blocks. But granted, you are just blocking with the Nightmare that Ashiok created, so, it's hard to be that upset about it, obviously. Looks like Josh is going to go ahead and uptick. He'll get his Nightmare back. James looks to be in a reasonable position this game if he can manage to actually take down this Ashiok, as we see Mark of Lamprey is going to be coming down. We'll see what he's attaching it to. Looks like it will be the 3/2 with Menace. James will have to discard 2 cards when it enters the battlefield. And he will do just that. Aspect of Lamprey, excuse me. Not Mark of Lamprey. And Josh, happy to attack again. So he's going to attack for 3 with Lifelink this time. I'd be surprised if James does anything. As a matter of fact, he will not. He'll just go ahead and take the damage. He's left with a Dreadful Apathy as the only card in his hand. So he could Dreadful Apathy this Nightmare token this turn to be able to deal with the Ashiok if he so deems that important. Or he could send it on the 3/2 with Menace and Lifelink at this point if he thinks that he can deal with the Ashiok over the course of 2 turns, and that's just an okay result. All things considered, though, it is pretty rough. Obviously, Mind Rot, pretty good card in sealed, and when it comes with Lifelink, Mind Rot with upside or whatever, you gotta be pretty happy with it, especially in a sealed format. Obviously, the card gets significantly worse in draft when you expect more aggressive strategies to be showing up, but in sealed, usually you can get away with just greeting out as hard as you possibly can. So James really giving this Dreadful Apathy a long think here. Looks like he's just going to go ahead and attack the Ashiok. Josh will make the same block as last time, Swamp into exile for James. And then Ashiok will take 3. Ashiok down to 1 now, as we see James did determine that he can beat this Ashiok. He just needs the time to do it. Terranika really showing off what she's good for here. just absolutely absurd, as that Temple Thief and the Swamp, of course, did get exiled from the top of James's deck. He's probably not too upset. Another land off the top now for James. Or for Josh, excuse me. He's only got this measly 2-3 here. 2-3 looks reasonable, and in fact, you know, will be able to keep his Ashiok alive if he decides to chump block with it, but chump block with it certainly would be what it's doing. Of course, with this 2-3 plus the 2-3 that Ashiok makes, he will be able to double block the Terranika, potentially put an end to it, but that would mean the end of Ashiok as well, so definitely an interesting decision here. And with 2 lands in hand, it looks like we might be approaching just a more or less a top deck battle here between the players, as James will go ahead and activate his Dreadful Apathy to exile the enchanted creature. That's pretty nice. It's going to put the Dreadful Apathy in his graveyard for future escape cards, thinking cards like Woe Strider and the like. Of course, Naiad of the Hidden Coves certainly got some text on it that James is probably worried about it, but we can see that Josh, with only 2 lands in hand, looks like Josh is going to go ahead and go for the double block here to save the Ashiok. He'll have to exile Timrit, Chosen from Dead, and another Swamp, and he'll just go ahead and play the land that he drew. Send it back over to Josh. Josh exiled 6 cards now with this Ashiok. Another land off the top. That's not good news for Josh. He had one turn where he could have made the decision to get this Terranika off the battlefield, but he decided that this was not going to be the time to do it. And yeah, James is just continuing to slam in with his 2 creatures, and at this point, no point jumping with the 2-3. Ashiok's going to die no matter what. Looks like James just going to send the turn back. Did not get a good look at the card he drew, unfortunately. And oh, here's some action off the top for Josh. We'll certainly see this one enter the battlefield, as it is Farika's Chosen, I want to say. I believe it's a something along those lines, if I'm not mistaken. But thankfully, the most important part here is that it is a spell for Josh, meaning that he's going to be able to start clawing his way back onto the board. Now he's going to be able to contest this Terranika on James's side of the battlefield. Oh, it's a Scavenging Harpy, excuse me. I definitely got a bad look at that art. So Scavenging Harpy did get to exile a card from James's graveyard. Of course, Woe Strider, the choice, certainly the most important one in James's graveyard. Now James left with just a couple irrelevant cards. Here comes some attacks from James. This screams Final Death to me. The fact that he's got 2 cards in his hand, he didn't play anything last turn. We'll see if Josh decides to make any double blocks or anything like that. Of course, he only has the land in hand. Looks like he just elected no blocks. Interesting choice. It's tough to make that play when all of your opponent's creatures have vigilance, but of course, you know, you got to do what you got to do. As now we'll see the Kraken enter the battlefield. This is a 3/5 with Constellation, and it's basically just going to be a 3/5 here. It's not going to be doing pretty much anything other than that, though 3/5 is pretty significant on this board. And here comes a 2/1 with flying. Josh going to go ahead and get a little aggressive with that one. He'll send James down to 12 life. James, another card off the top. No Final Death on end step means that maybe I was a little bit wrong about the cards in his hand. Ooh, Dreadful Apathy, one of them. So this is the 3rd copy of Dreadful Apathy. Remember, James debating if he wanted to put that card in his deck. Seems pretty good here. So Dreadful Apathy, the Shoal Kraken, and then attack in 4/7. Here will James. The Ashiok Nightmare will have to jump in front of the 4 toughness or the 4 power creature. James will exile 2 more cards from his deck. He's got a Heliod's Punishment in his hand, as well as a Plains, does James. So he's got yet another, you know, essentially pacifism in hand, and he's just going to be able to beat down here as Josh's life total, I assume, is not actually 13 and is in fact quite a bit lower than 13, given all of the attacking that James has been doing over the last couple turns. Though I must confess I have not been able to exactly keep track with that. Oh, he is at 13. Okay. Interesting. All right. So Here is an attack for 2. Oh, yes, of course, he's been blocking. Okay, so here's another draw for James. Here's an attack for 7. That'll put Josh down to 6, and then James will follow up with yet another 2-1. James has got these beats on lock. Josh going to be unable to attack anymore unless he draws a relevant spell, and James has effectively fought through all of the creatures or all of the threats in Josh's deck. Is now Temple Thief will enter the battlefield. Certainly not quite the high octane card Josh was looking for off the top this turn. And now James just has a pretty clean attack here. He could have attacked with his other 2-1 there and essentially forced a double chump or a chump in a trade from Josh's side of the battlefield. As it stands, he's just going to go ahead and attack with the 3-3 and the 4-4 that will be from the Terranica, of course, and then send the turn back on over to Josh. And of course, for all of you guys out there watching, if you at any point want any clarification on what the cards in play are, please just put it in chat. I don't know every card off the top of my head yet. No, these players don't know every card off the top of their head. Production doesn't know every card off the top of their head, so you certainly should not be expected to. Obviously, we have the card thing pulled up on the screen here, so if you want to know what any of the cards in play are, just put it in chat. I'd be happy to tell you if I know, and we'll get it pulled up on screen for you if I don't know off the top of my head either. So get that out of the way. It looks like here is an attack. James could have played the Iliad's Punishment here for lethal, but the Intamable will of course end the game, and that means that we will see James take down the first game. That was a crazy game as James managed to fight through the Ashiok that came from Josh. Obviously, Ashiok is an absurd magic card in Sealed, so it's going to be really hard for the Ashiok to lose once it's in play. But yeah, the Terranica, me and James sort of discussed that we thought that would be the best card in his deck, and boy, it looked absurd there. So I think very, very impressive showing here for James's deck. And let's take a think about all the cards that we know James has in his sideboard. Obviously, we have no idea the cards that Josh has access to, but when I think about the cards that James has, I think I'm relatively interested in my Flicker of Fate in this matchup. The Flicker of Fate, so something that we did not bring up in the deck tech that I did bring to James's attention later, is that Flicker of Fate with Dreadful Apathy is very, very powerful. You can activate that 3-mana activated ability of Dreadful Apathy to exile the enchanted creature, and then with that on the stack, you can Flicker of Fate it and then reattach it to a different creature, and then the previous creature will still be exiled. So it's super, super powerful. So I think that Josh's deck looked a little bit weak to all of these enchantment removal pacifism effects, and I think that getting a little bit of extra mileage out of those effects seems pretty powerful here. And I did get a chance to look through Josh's deck very briefly before this match, and I definitely saw an Erebos' Intervention in there as well, so that's definitely a card that Josh is going to be looking to try and draw. He's got some big hitters in this blue-black deck, obviously Ashiok, Erebos' Intervention, and of course the mini Factor Fiction rare that the name of just keeps slipping my mind, unfortunately. It's some absurd name with some big long title, but it's the 4-mana 3/2 that Factor Fictions with Menace when it enters. So now we will see hands for game number 2. Looks like Josh will be on the play. Back over to James. Atris. Thank you very much. Artris? Atris. Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths. All right, I'll do my best to keep that one in my mind as we see a couple of lands back and forth for players. Here comes Timid, Chosen from Death. This is a 2-mana, 2 and star. Its toughness is equal to the devotion to black, which of course can be at minimum 2 because of itself being a black card. And it's got a nice activated ability too. You can pay 2 mana and exile 2 cards from an opponent's graveyard. Exile up to 2 cards from graveyards, You gain a life for each creature at card exiled this way. So this is a very effective plan against anything trying to do escape and all that. So pretty happy with that card in general. As here we'll see Timurit, Chosen from Death, aptly named Chosen to Die here as Elspeth's Nightmare comes down. It's going to destroy target creature and opponent controls with power 2 or less on its first chapter. In its second chapter, it's going to have target opponent reveal their hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. That player discards that card. And in chapter 3, it's going to exile target opponent's graveyard. This card seems phenomenal to me, just in limited in general, but sealed, I think especially, it's going to be very good. And now we see James following his Timurit up. I bet he wished he had cast his these 2 drops in the reverse order, but unfortunately that is how things played out. Now we'll see James here going to get thoughts. He's got a Temple Thief, a Heliod's Punishment, an Omen of the Sun, a Dreadful Apathy, and a Terranika. So no white mana here from James. Looks like he kept this hand on the strength of Timurit itself, but all white spells aside from the Temple Thief. So interested to see if Josh elects to take the most powerful card, which it looks like he does in his mind, which he believes is Heliod's Punishment. He does leave James with that Terranika, even after the last game where he got solidly rocked by that Terranika, to say the least. But we'll have to see what his follow-up is. He looks very scared of the Heliod's Punishment, as now we see Venomous Hierophant come down here for Josh. It's a 4-mana 3/3 with Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, he puts the top 3 cards of his library into his graveyard. Just definitely a solid filler playable here. Fuels the escape mechanic very nicely, so absolutely something you're looking to put in your deck if you're playing black. And also definitely bricks off all of James's measly, dorky 2-mana black creature beats. So now we're going to see James's graveyard go ahead and get exiled here after Josh draws his card. And of course, Elspeth's Nightmare is, of course, in the graveyard now. That's another draw step here from Josh. Let's take a look at Josh's hand now. I see a Scavenging Harpy in the hand, though I did not get a good look at everything else. Well, I think there's an Aspect of Lamprey there in hand as well, so now seems like a good time to hit James with a Mind Rat. He's got a hand of completely uncastable cards, but you know they're all spells, so it seems pretty relevant to me. Looks like he's just going to settle for the Scavenging Harpy on this turn, a 3-mana 2/1 flyer that exiles a card from an opponent's graveyard when it enters the battlefield. Of course, James's graveyard already in exile, so not getting too much value out of that mode, but the 2/1 flyer still seems pretty relevant. Here's an attack for 3. We'll see now if James elects to double block. He will. This will be a trade straight across. Of course, Death Touch, meaning that the double block will not go his way. Not that it would have without the Death Touch, I suppose. So here comes a 0/1 Goat token, of course. And now we got Goat v Scavenging Harpy. Swamp off the top for James. Not what he was looking for, unfortunately. Attack for 1 with the Goat. as a joke, of course. Send the turn over to Josh, as he cannot cast any spells, unfortunately for him. This one does not appear to be going James's way. As a Riptide Turtle, the draw now. Now I think we're certainly going to see this Aspect of Lamprey get put on the Scavenging Harpy. I can't really imagine doing anything else. He could theoretically kill this Goat with his 6-mana card, but it doesn't seem excellent to me, as he will just go ahead and flash in a turtle now. Doesn't see the point to waiting for it, but I believe that Goat is now officially on lockdown. Goat's not getting through anymore. We got the turtle here. He's ready to shut it down. Josh thinking if he wants to cast his Aspect of Lamprey. He is casting it into 4 open mana, so it is certainly risky. He's trying to Aspect of Lamprey his 2/1 with flying. He could have theoretically Aspect of Lamprey the Riptide Turtle if he felt like being a little more cautious, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, that Josh knows all 4 cards in James's hand, as he's going to discard a Flicker of Fates and an Omen. Oh, is that a Terranika? I believe that's Terranika. Of course, happy to discard the white card, so this makes sense to me. Another swamp for James. Just nothing going on here. So now we've got our 2/1 with flying and lifelink, which is pretty happily running away with the game. Here's Drag to the Underworld off the top here from Josh. Certainly one of the best uncommons in the set as far as limit is concerned. It's essentially a 2-mana, maybe 3 mana, occasionally 4 mana removal spell at instant speed, it's always going to be excellent. So obviously very happy to have that one. Here's a 6th swamp from James, getting really punished for this 10-7 mana base, it appears, is James. Maybe he'll give that one a second think here. That's another land off the top for James. Josh, happy and content to just leave his removal spells in his hand. Obviously, he could deploy the 4-mana 3/2 that gives something -X/-X, where X is your devotion, which the name is slipping my mind, unfortunately, but it is 4 black for a 3/2, and when it enters the battlefield, it'll give target creature -X/-X until end of turn, where X is your devotion to black. He does have that in his hand, and he is holding on to it, so he's got that and the Drag to the Underworld, which he's just leaving in hand. And here is the 6-mana 5/5 flyer, and I expected that this one is going to prompt a removal spell from Josh. It's only a 3/3 currently, down to a 2/2 after Josh draws, so theoretically Josh could just play no cards for the next 2 or 3 turns and essentially just kill it through cards in hand, but that doesn't seem like really where you want to be, and I'm more than happy to develop this 3/2 as opposed to slow the game way down. So I think I quite enjoy accelerating the pace by killing this Enemy of Enlightenment with our 3/2 as opposed to slowing the game way down and not playing, committing to not playing spells in order to, try and kill it. But even then, the Enemy of Enlightenment's ability that at the beginning of your upkeep each player discards a card is going to certainly hinder that. So this thing going to have to get taken down here. And obviously me and James talked about this card not being the best or anything, so Josh with 4 cards in hand, or with 1 card in hand, makes the Enemy of Enlightenment a 4/4, and with 4 devotion means that will end up destroying the Enemy of Enlightenment. And now Josh can go back to getting his beats on with his Scavenging Harpy, just doing what he do. Happy to just send in for 2 points of damage. That'll put the life totals to 12 to 28 now in favor of Josh. As James draws, I believe, at least a black spell for turn. I think that might have been a Final Breath. And here's a draw, another Riptide Turtle for Josh. And yeah, he's just happy to go ahead, put that one into play now, and I expect that we're just going to see some attacks for 5 here from Josh. Indeed, it is. So we're going to go ahead and exile this Scavenging Harpy. James has had enough of that. Go ahead and get that thing out of here. James has quite a bit of removal in his deck, and he's still sitting here waiting on Plains to unlock the rest of his hand. And if he manages to draw Plains, he might actually find himself back in this game. No Plains, but I believe that is at least another castable black spell here from James. So he's going to go ahead and take a quick look at Josh's graveyard. Make sure there's no escape cards, no hidden value that he needs to be worried about here. It looks like Scavenging Harpy was the draw, so we'll see what James elects to exile. It will be the Wave-Breaking Hippocamp. And then he'll send the turn back on over, ready with its 2/1, ready to trade with this 3/2. James at 14, so he's still got enough life here to play with that even if Josh decides to drag this Harpy into the Underworld, he'll have enough life total to get a few draws. Obviously, Josh not particularly great at pressuring with, cards like Riptide Turtle in his deck. He's got 2 of them in play that are sitting there doing a whole lot of not much, and, as soon as James, finds his planes and starts deploying threats, obviously these Riptide Turtles are going to be doing what they're meant to do, and they're going to be blocking, and really, we're kind of just sitting here waiting for, Josh to find one of his haymakers like Ashiok or whatever. So here is a draw. Oh boy, I think that was Plains. Oh, it must not have been. I must have misseen. I think that must have been Indomitable Will. Here is land for turn. Josh with another land, still thinking if he's willing to drag this Harpy into the Underworld. He didn't do it last turn, so I'd be a little surprised if he changed his mind this turn. He He found the plains. James also not willing to opt into the race, but looks like something has changed. He now is willing to opt into the race. He'll put Josh down to 24. A long, long battle for this Harpy to come back from as he'll send the turn back. Interesting plains attack go, certainly representing something. Of course, he does have that Omen of the Sun. Josh knows about it, so he'll go ahead and cast it. He's going to do his best to double block here. We'll see if this is enough to prompt a drag from the underworld from Josh, though I think I'd be a little surprised. I think Josh should be more than happy to just let this trade happen. He already got his value out of it. Ooh, another copy of Riptide Turtle, I believe, was the draw there from Josh, though I'm not 100% certain. As these 1/1s obviously never going to do anything other than trade here for James with the 2 Riptide Turtles in play. Now, the Harpy continuing to send in. This, of course, can win the game for James, though it's almost certainly too slow to realistically do so with cards like Ashiok in Josh's deck. Ashiok really feels like kind of a clock on this game where, like, if James does not win before Josh draws Ashiok, he's going to be in a world of hurt. So we'll see how this ends up going. We'll see end of turn, James flash in an aura. He's going to go ahead and give his Harpy +2/+1, I do believe. So now we've got 4 power in the air, significantly faster, doubling our clock here as James attacks for 4 in the air. Oh, +1/+2, excuse me, +1/+2. So this is a clock of 3. Thank you very much. So, yes, more lands off the top for Josh. Man, Josh really drawing a lot of lands here. Of course, this is still a 7-turn clock here for James as James finds his second white source now. He'll attack for 3 once again. He's got a Dreadful Apathy in his hand for the first threat that Josh plays. Of course, Dreadful Apathy unable to take down the card Ashiok, and Atris gets most of its value when it enters the battlefield. Temple Thief, the draw here for Josh. Not any of the big hitters we're talking about, but at least has some amount of text, can at least start attacking back. We'll see if that's enough for James to spring a copy of Dreadful Apathy on it, but I sort of doubt so. He'll go ahead, try to scry 2 here. Looks like those 2 going straight to the bottom. James not in the market for lands at this stage of the game. He got his second white source. That's all he wants to see. And man, James here in 2/1 town. Got another 2/1 here. James rethinking how he wants to tap. He'll go ahead and tap black. Down to 15 now is Josh. Obviously, this 2/1 essentially just here to trade with the Temple Thief is okay. Now we see a pretty legitimate clock here from Josh. So he's going to go ahead and deploy this card that I can't remember the name of, but I do remember the text of. It is a 3-mana 2/1. Whenever a card gets put from your library into your graveyard, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and it cannot be blocked until end of turn. Devourer of Memory, and then it has 3 mana. Put the top card of your library into your graveyard. So this is an unblockable threat for James. So I expect that this one is going to be good enough to prompt a Dreadful Apathy from here for James. Here is the attack for 3 as per usual. Josh down to 12 now. James has somehow pulled ahead in the race, and I think that we're certainly going to see Dreadful Apathy get put onto this Devourer of Memories. Yes, indeed. Here we will see that. James presumably not going to exile it immediately, but I expect will do so when, Josh goes ahead and passes the turn back to James if James finds no other use for his mana. Here is a draw from Josh. There's Ashiok. So now the flavor of this game is going to change quite a bit. James is going to attempt to win the game before Ashiok can. I believe he's going to attempt to race this Ashiok. We'll see if James elects that he's going to have to take a pit stop to deal with Ashiok. Of course, it'll take 3 attacks from this Harpy to deal with Ashiok, and 3 attacks, it only takes 4 to kill Josh, so I'm leaning towards James just kind of sending it face at this point, but Ashiok is very, very scary, and Now I think if I'm Josh, I'm ready to drag this Harpy down into the underworld and just protect my Ashiok and try and win the game with it. James, no exile on the Mesmerizing, or on the Devourer of Memory end step, which I'm not crazy about. I think he likely should have exiled that Devourer of Memory. Here is an attack for 3, and this will prompt the drag from the underworld from Josh. Like I said, I do agree with this. He's been happy to trade his life total for information for this long, but at this point, drag from the underworld is going to have to get used. And now James, man, I had so much hope for him here for a little bit. He felt like he almost found his way back in, but Ashiok just came just in time for Josh, I think, to kind of close the door on this game. I don't really see much of a way of James clawing back into this game from that Ashiok. Here's the Kraken now for Josh. A 3-5 on the ground, of course, something that he's going to be more than happy to attack with. And I think Josh has just got some pretty reasonable attacks here. He's got a 2-3 and a 2-2 that can just send in. Obviously, I expect the 2-2 to trade with the 2-1. But all things considered, I'm pretty happy to do that if I'm in Josh's seat. Josh, just considering his options. He's held this turtle in his hand for pretty much ever, which is totally fair. The turtle obviously not really doing much, and here are those attacks I mentioned, and James will be forced to exile the top 2 cards of his library when Ashiok attacks, of course. And then James goes ahead, makes the obvious block. He'll get a goat for his troubles. Excuse me. And now James goes to his turn, still looking for any real ways to deal with Ashiok here, and still none coming, unfortunately. Another Plains was the draw for James. Josh, interestingly enough, elected against deploying his Kraken, decides that now is not the time. So he draws a Mogus's Will off the top, does Josh. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let Josh take a look at his exile. Josh is like, can I take a look at what you got going on over there? James is like, yeah, sure, here's my graveyard. Josh is like, no. I want to see your exile, bruh. I got this Ashiok on 7. I want to see your exile, dude. As, of course, James will be exiling 4 more cards here if Josh goes to combat before he does anything else. But I think that Josh is probably just supposed to go ahead and continue to make Nightmare tokens here. I think that the Nightmares are just going to win the game more than likely, as I believe he does go ahead and plus up to 8 there. He'll go ahead and put that Mogus's Will onto a Nightmare. It gives the equipped creature +2/+1. It escapes for 2 and a black and exiling 2 cards from your graveyard. It's an enchantment, so you know it's a kill spell for some things, all 1 toughness creatures, of course, from your opponent's side of the battlefield, and it makes your guys a little bit bigger too. So here come 4 cards off the top for James. Didn't get a great look at those 4, but I did see at least 2 lands among them. And James, I think, is certainly very, very behind at this point, as we're going to go ahead and see a final death take down the Nightmare with the Mogus's Will on it. And James did let Josh actually go to combat with it, so he did have to exile 2 cards from his library there, which I'm not a huge fan of. I'm actually reasonably concerned about decking right now, and by reasonably concerned, I mean I am very concerned about decking right now. Ashiok has a real way of just chunking through your library, especially in sealed. And yeah, Plains off the top. That's going to be enough for James to pack it up. James, I think James was playing with borrowed time there that game, to be certain, as he missed his Plains for what I would consider, I mean, it must have been like 10 turns into the game that James found his first white mana, and he had a hand of all white cards, so I I think that James even having a reasonable shot at winning that game was somewhat absurd, so he's probably got to be feeling actually pretty okay going into this third game here. These Riptide Turtles have looked very, very bad on Josh's side of the battlefield, and if I was Josh, I'd be thinking about sideboarding some of these out. Your opponent's deck, not all that aggressive. Obviously, we've seen the Terranika, and Terranika is certainly a card that you're going to be happy to have Riptide Turtle against, but the rest of James's deck doesn't really feel like they've been that impactful against, so I think maybe Josh might want to look to his sideboard and maybe try and trim on some of these turtles. 3 feels like a lot of Riptide Turtles to have in your deck. That was a Magic game indeed, Lark. That was pretty ridiculous. All right, players shuffling up here for game number 3. We will see James on the play for this game. Oh, hello, hello. I've got somebody joining me in the booth. Welcome, Noble.
Hello,
Grab a seat.
What is up?
All right. We got James versus Josh. We've got, well, Josh is playing blue-black control. Essentially, highlights include Atris and Ashiok.
Yeah.
That's what's been going on.
Which one's Atris? Is that the...
Atris is the 4-mana 3/2 with Menace when it enters the
sickest
battlefield.
card in the
Yeah,
set?
yeah, it's really, really sweet. Yeah, you do the like mini Factor Fiction game. And James is playing this pretty sweet white-black deck that we watched him build a little bit earlier. We just watched a pretty ludicrous game where James played his first white land on like turn 10 and then like almost won, but then, you know, Josh eventually drew
I walked
Ashiok.
by and I looked at his hand and it was the 5-mana exile spell, like Final End.
Final
and then
Death, yeah.
3 of the pacifism.
Dreadful Apathy.
And I was
Yeah.
like, this can't be going badly. And I looked at all the
All the swamps in play.
Well, no, then I looked at all the turtles and I was like, okay, this isn't going badly.
Yeah.
And then Ashiok got resolved. And I was like,
Things are going
this is
badly.
going badly.
Yeah. All right. So, looks like Josh happy with his 6-card hand, and James did, of course, keep his 7 in this game. Players, they start things off with a swamp on both sides. A slower start here from James. A couple of swamps, no 2-drops. James, of course, playing 2-mana 2/1 tribal, so not having any here on this first turn of the game is somewhat unfortunate.
Awesome.
As now he'll follow things up with a Woe Strider.
Oh, and then we
here
get that LSV token in play.
The third turn of the game. The LSV, the GOAT, the
Yeah,
greatest
he's the
of
goat.
all time.
Yeah, he's the goat.
Ooh, End Step Turtle. Cha-ching. The trademark from Josh.
Oh, yeah.
I love these turtles. These turtles have not looked very good, I must admit.
I don't think they are very good, I must admit.
Yeah, I think the card's definitely playable.
Yeah.
But they just haven't looked very good in these matches. And
Ooh, that makes your
there's some-
turtles 1 mana.
It's true.
That's some synergy.
Yeah,
I
it's
like that.
true. So we got a 2/3 now. Ready and primed to trade with this Woe Strider from James. Here comes a Temple Thief on his side of the battlefield. James has a theme with his deck, and it's called not playing planes.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah. We've watched two. We've watched this is the third game now, and this is the second one where we aren't seeing planes. And, ooh, here's Atchis.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
you missed a really sweet play from James in the first game where James's opponent Josh resolved Atchis,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
the cards were the wave breaching hippocamp and 2 islands, and he put island wave breaching hippocamp face up and island face down, and then his opponent took the face down island. It was sweet.
Okay.
All right, so speak of the devil, here's wave breaching hippocamp as the face down card, and then we've got a Riptide Turtle and a Mogus's Favor, and yeah, Josh happy to put the Mogus's Favor in the graveyard as well as the turtle.
You don't need the turtle that
Yeah,
much.
and so he's just gonna go ahead and draw his wave breaching hippocamp. So he got the good card out of it this time. Certainly, I think if those piles were face up, that's the one he would have taken, I believe. So
Yeah. The hippocamp being it's quite good with the turtles, which I didn't know that he had.
certainly,
which makes
but
a little more sense.
makes the turtles much better.
Turtles, yeah.
Absolutely, 3 is still a lot of turtles.
Yeah, but-
I've seen at least 3 turtles in the deck. I would be shocked if it was 4. So I think it is 3 turtles, but I think he's pretty happy
Yeah.
to have that card in his hand now. So now back to James, still with 4 swamps in play, as per usual. He's got an aspect of Lamprey in his hand. Could go ahead and hit his opponent with a Mind Rod if he wants to, but looks like,
I would have there.
well, he must be holding something up as he ships the turn
Well, that doesn't
back
make sense.
over to Josh. And whoa-oh, Ashiok.
Does he have the Eat to Extinction? The actual
No.
spell that answers a Planeswalker?
James?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, that's a shame.
He does not. So his only plan for beating Ashiok is attacking. You can imagine that is not a particularly powerful one as now. James
Against the turtles.
Yeah, James just untaps, draws a card. No, yeah, that's enough of that. Yeah, can't beat the Ashiok.
Yeah, checks the clock. 4 minutes left. Yeah, we don't need to sit here.
Totally reasonable. You know, you're not hitting your land drops. You only have one color. James played this Song and Dance last game, except his opponent didn't resolve Ashiok until, turn 20 or whatever. But Ashiok on turn 5 is just no chance here from James. So anyway, that was a sweet match. Yeah. Well played, Josh. Keep running it up with Ashiok. We're gonna leave you guys with the time machine here for just a couple of minutes. We will be right back for round number 2 with some more Theros Beyond Death pre-release action. Make sure you guys don't go anywhere. Alrighty, welcome back everyone to round number 2 here. Hello, welcome back. Hey everyone, welcome back to the third and final round of Pioneer here at Paradise Games. We got Brad and James, both of the winners of the last 2 matches, facing off now in the feature match for the third and final round for the undefeated trophy. Let's see how this plays out. We got Blue-Green Eldrazi versus Green-Red Blitz. This one in theory is definitely a little puzzling to me. So I can easily see James kind of just taking over the board state with too many large creatures for Brad to be able to effectively punch through, but I could also easily see Brad just having pump spell after pump spell after pump spell after pump spell in order to just keep getting over these creatures and James eventually running out of relevant threats. So we'll see how this goes. I think that the Stubborn Denials seem pretty good in this matchup for James, as Brad's probably going to be forced into trying to get his creatures through in combat, so we'll see how it goes. I also think that potentially Brad could just not have enough pump spells that pump toughness. He's got a lot of +3, +1, +4, +2-esque effects, but without First Strike or like Teamer Battle Rage gives Double Strike, for example. His creatures are probably just going to be trading with the large Eldrazi, and that's usually not as good. You're essentially 2-for-1ing yourself if you don't have a Season of Growth or something. So here is a Troll. Of course, it's going to be a 2-mana 3/3, so bigger than what James is up to currently, although I expect that to change going into James's next turn. He's got that Lovestruck Beast hanging out. James does have the ability to turn it into an Elk. He would turn it into a 4/4 Elk, of course, but it would remove the ability for it to gain hexproof, but I doubt James really cares about the hexproof of Brad's creatures so much in this matchup. He really doesn't have that much interaction for creatures in his deck. It's mostly Stubborn Denial and, creatures from James. So here is Thought Not Seer. Here goes Brad's hand. It's got a couple of mountains to start. I see a Teamer Battle Rage under those mountains as James makes us work through it slowly. Here's a Season of Growth. Interesting that we saw Brad to play the creature first. Gore Clan Rampager, and then a second Teamer Battle Rage are the other 2 cards in hand. So this is an interesting choice. If I were James, I'd probably lean towards taking either the Season of Growth or the Gore Clan Rampager. Leaving him with double Teamer Battle Rage is pretty scary against our deck because we really want to be blocking with our larger creatures, but Gore Clan Rampager +4/+4 is definitely big enough to threaten your creatures, and also the double Teamer Battle Rage don't do anything on their own. So looks like James agrees Gore Clan Rampager is going to hit the bin, and there's Titan Strength, the draw from Brad. That's a pretty good one now, because I bet James is going to be pretty tempted to block, but looks like Brad's just going to go ahead, play the Season of Growth, ship the turn. He's not willing to trade the Troll plus a Titan Strength for the Thought Not Seer, interestingly enough. All right, let's see what James finds himself up to now. He could also theoretically try and tick this Blast Zone up to 2 at some point. That seems very effective against what Brad's got going on. CMC 2 tends to be the kind of the sweet spot for all of Brad's creatures. So here's an attack for 4. Brad's just, didn't want to offer the trade then, not willing to offer the trade now. Gonna go ahead and take the 4 down to 15. James will ship it back. So we could see potential extra counter going on. James has a Reality Smasher in his hand. Wonder what else he's got going on. I wonder if we're holding up a Stubborn Denial or something similar here, along with just shipping the turn with potential Blast Zone threat, or if we're mostly just on empty here and looking to hit another land to be able to really cast our threats. Notably, James could have deployed a Lovestruck Beast, so that's got to be pinging on Brad's radar that he must have something, and as a matter of fact, I talked myself to it, so James must have something here, and it's likely not just put counter on Blast Zone, although it easily could be just put counter on Blast Zone. That does seem quite good here, so I expect to see no blocks here from James. And James is probably just going to be preparing himself to take like 10 this turn or something, assuming that Brad had drawn any pump spell. Certainly far from ideal, but looks like that's what we got. So here is a 1/1 jumping in front of the troll. Looks like Brad just says okay. Interesting turn here, and then James puts a counter on the Blast Zone. So sure enough, that was all that was going on here. So here is activate Blast Zone. Brad's going to cycle a Teamer Battle Rage off the Season of Growth in response. And then James will just be able to get in for 4 uncontested here. He strip mines himself here, and he is missing land drops. So James is definitely banking on Brad not having anything relevant here, looking for Brad to be missing on creatures and the like. But bad news for James. Here comes Busara Tower Archer. Busara Tower Archer, of course, is a creature. So no good news for James. James looks like he's still missing on lands. Oko, Thief of Crowns in hand. I see an Elvish Mystic as well. Looks like he's going to attack for 4. Brad happily takes it down to 7. Here comes Oko, Thief of Crowns. I expect that we're just going to make a food this turn. Looks like we will ship the turn back over to Brad. So Brad's going to need to string together some pretty impressive spells here to be able to find lethal in a timely manner. Of course, James representing lethal on board now, so if Brad doesn't have an attack for 20 this turn, he actually can't make it. And with the Busara Tower Archer, we need to give 8 power and then cast Teamer Battle Rage to be able to get there. I see Rimrock Knight, Titan Strength, and Colossus. That does make 8, but does he have enough mana? We've got 2 mana from the Collision Colossus, 1 mana from both spells, so that costs 4 mana, means that he's missing 1 land to be able to kill James this turn, which is not great for Brad. So if we're 1 land away from being able to kill James, what's our best choice? It looks like we're probably just going to have to pass the turn and try and make a profitable block of some kind. Potentially go after the Thought-Knot Seer, be able to draw a card for our troubles. So here's a land from James. Oh, he's got a Thought-Knot Seer pulled to the front of his hand. That one seems quite good. Be able to take away a Teamer Battle Rage, and that'll end up basically eliminating any ways that Brad really has of killing you here in the near future. So I think we'll see that come down. And oh, Questing Beast. Oh, Questing Beast looks much better to me. And yep, that's plenty good. That'll pack it up for Brad. So James manages to find lethal, but he was really close to dead there. Just a single land would have been enough for Brad to kill him, but of course, didn't have it, so we'll see James take the first game in this match. Let's take a look at the sideboards. Brad has 4 Destructive Revelry, 3 Gruul Spellbreaker, 2 Feed the Clan, 2 Scavenging Ooze, 1 Gore Clan Rampager, 1 Collision Colossus, and 2 Lava Coils. So what stands out to me immediately, the Lava Coils seem great. They're going to deal with some bigger creatures like Thought-Knot Seer and the like, but also when they're on the play, they'll probably just get pointed at Mana Dorks somewhat frequently and try and slow James down, really. The Gruul Spellbreakers don't seem particularly good. The Scavenging Ooze, The extra Gore Clan Rampager seems excellent in this matchup. The +4/+4, I mentioned the toughness boost being really important in the matchup, so I think I like that one quite a bit. So I would expect to see the Gore Clan Rampager, the Lava Coils, and that's probably all that really stands out to me. Maybe Brad's got some stinkers that he wants to bring in some other stuff for, but those are the ones that I like. Let's take a look at James. He's got 3 Reclamation Sage, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, a Mystical Dispute, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Negate, 1 Scavenging Ooze, and 2 Feed the Clan. So I think I like the negates from James. Like I said, we're probably just creatures-wise, we're going to be bigger than Brad. So if we can get our creatures into combat and prevent Brad from pump spelling them, we're likely going to win those combats. And Brad's, I believe, going to be forced into some of those combats somewhat frequently. So I think that seems like a pretty good choice to me. The Reclamation Sages are an option. We saw Season of Growth out of Brad. I don't love it, but if we've got cards to take out, I'm pretty into that. The 2 Feed the Clans are other ones that stand out to me as totally doable. Gaining 10 life seems pretty relevant in this matchup. You know, if Brad overextends into a Feed the Clan and ends up dying on the backswing, that seems like something that could easily happen. So it's going to be rough for Brad to overextend into the open mana like that, but it doesn't seem entirely impossible. So, you know, so sometimes Brad's just going to look down at his hand. James is going to have no blocker. He's just going to turn his creature sideways and hope that he gets it through. So we'll see how that ends up working out for him. And of course, James does still have the Stubborn Denials in his deck that are really going to shine in this matchup, I think. The single mana negates are going to be really, really good because, you know, just in the nature of them being turned on, it's going to mean that James is likely winning combat. So let's take a look at the opening hands here for game number 2. Brad's got, looks like reasonable hand, and looks like James is going to have to ship his back. Hand looked pretty good, but I'm not certain it had any lands, so I think that one's going to have to go. Brad's hand, on the other hand, looks like it's got a Rimrock Knight, Forest, I see a Stomping Ground, Temur Battle Rage, Lava Coil. Looks like a pretty good one. Yeah, Brad's hand looks great all around, honestly. It's got a Glade Cover Scout in there as well. Just looks like everything that Brad wants to be doing over there. I think he might be missing, you know, 1 or 2 pump spells. The Temur Battle Rage looks slightly out of place, but all things considered, I like the Lava Coil. We've got Glade Cover Scout and a Lava Coil lined up for a potential, you know, Elvish Mystic, or if Brad decides that he wants to save the Lava Coil for bigger threats, then that's a totally viable option as well. All right, let's take a look at James's 6 here. Hopefully you can find something more reasonable than the old no-lander of last hand. I see Stubborn Denial. That one stands out. Blast Zone. That one looks like no good either. I didn't get a great look at the rest of the cards, but assuming James's frustrated handshake there, I'm going to guess that Blast Zone might have been the only land in that hand, and that he just didn't have any colored sources, so gonna have to ship that one back. Down to 5 now is James, and I really like Brad's hand against a 5 from James. The Lava Coil looks excellent. Temur Battle Rage is, you know, not excellent on its own, but assuming we have any help from the top of our deck, it's gonna get there. We have plenty of lands. You know, our draw is always going to be functional, and that seems pretty good against a opponent mulliganing to 5. So let's see how James's 5-card hand looks. Definitely going to be looking for something special here. There's no Eldrazi Temples in the format, so those really, you know, explosive turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer-esque draws are nowhere to be seen in this deck, unfortunately. Of course, James really wishes he could find something like that, because that's really what you're looking for on a 5, you know, something just absurd, a nut draw, explosive, but it looks like he's just gonna have to settle for an okay hand. I see a Gilded Goose at the front of the hand there, so feeling all right. Oh, there's Oko. Speaking of nuts, he's goose into Oko probably, and we've seen this one many a time, so we'll see if Brad is gonna be able to find a way to deal with it. Another Temur Battle Rage off the top. Definitely not quite what Brad was looking for. Here's an attack for 1. James, not willing to risk his goose, will just take it. I expect that had James blocked, he would have just said okay, that takes 1 and made the same play. But also, I'm sure Brad definitely considered Lava Coiling the goose there instead of what he did. He might regret not doing that here once he sees this Oko come down. So Oko's gonna hit the field. It'll plus to make a food. We'll see what Brad wants to do about that. He could just leave the Oko at bay and try and go at James's face directly, try and have set up for a couple really explosive turns, but it doesn't look like Brad's hand has enough pump spells to be able to realistically do that. So I'm not crazy about that line. I think Brad might just need to send some damage at the Oko here and try and take it out. Brad notably also has a single red mana. That's really awkward. So with only 1 red mana, we can only cast a single card in our hands. Looks like Brad does elect that he has to send the damage at Oko. Rimrock Knight is going to be his 1 spell for turn. Definitely not quite what Brad wants to be seeing. We'll see what James elects to do with his turn. He's got the Oko Blast Zone's land for turn. I think he's probably going to be making that food into an elk. I also see a Heart of Kirin in his hand. That one looks pretty good to me. odds are we're going to be tossing some blockers in front of these creatures to try and protect our Oko, and we're going to expect at least one of these combats to end not super profitably, but looks like he goes for the +2 to make the food. All right, here comes the Heart of Kirin. Heart of Kirin, once again, probably going to be tossed in front of. Alrighty, we are back here with some round 2 action. Theros Beyond Death pre-release here. We got Noble against Preston here. We got some Sultai versus Esper. Got some blue-black grind going on here between these players. We'll have to see how this pans out. Of course, it's hard to know exactly how the matchups are going to line up before you see all the cards from either player, so we'll have to see. Looks like Noble did win the die roll. He'll be going first in this game, as he's going to lead things off with just a Lonely Forest and send it back over to Preston, whose hand at a glance looks a little land light here. He's going to play a Plains and then pass the turn back over to Noble, who will start things off with a Destiny Spinner. Destiny Spinner, one of the better uncommons from the set for sure. It's 2 mana, 2/3. Creature and enchantment spells you control cannot be countered, which is not super relevant in Limited, of course. But for 4 mana, target land you control becomes an XX where trample, where X is the number of enchantments you control. So it's got an ability that's relatively useful later in the game, and it's just a 2 mana, 2/3. So certainly going to be a welcome addition to any Limited deck, as he'll get in for 2 here and follow things up with an Elysian Caryatid. Of course, it's going to be tapping for 1 mana of any color. Of course, if he manages to find a creature with power 4 or greater, it'll tap for 2 mana. Ooh, Elspeth off the top here for Preston. That's definitely a good one. That could be a pretty big problem for Noble going into the later turns of the game, but looks like no land for Preston. I mean, he might just find himself kind of getting run over here, as Noble does have a relatively aggressive start here with a 2 mana, 2/3, and then a mana dork into a 5-drop already. This is Sphinx of Tomorrows. It's a 3 mana, or this is a 5 mana, 3/4 with flying. And now Noble's got 5 damage a turn. Preston's still missing land drops. On the draw, you know, if you have a powerful hand, these hands are super tempting to keep, but obviously, you know, sometimes you just get punished and miss your land drops, and then got nothing going on. And yeah, still nothing going on means that we're likely going to see Noble pull just too far ahead for even Elspeth to be able to really come back. As now we see another Witness of Tomorrows as a follow-up here from Noble. Noble missing a point of damage with the Elysian Caryatid. Unacceptable, completely absurd. Looks like no land drop again for Preston. Means that I'm surprised. I'll be surprised if we see him last another turn here, unfortunately. Yeah, it looks like just a discard to hand size from Preston. He's staying in here, fighting the good fight. Noble going to go ahead and cast a lethal spell here, and that is going to do it. And quick game 1 here, as Preston fails to find a 3rd land drop, unfortunately for him. But such is the way of the game sometimes. You hate to see it, but it is how it goes. Sometimes you get punished for keeping the greedy 2-landers, and obviously we all wish nobody ever got punished for keeping greedy 2-landers, but they are greedy for a reason. Oh, excuse me. So Noble didn't really see too much going on there in Preston's deck, so I'd be surprised if he made any drastic sideboard changes. Of course, Preston saw a little bit more of what was going on in Noble's deck, so maybe something's going to stick out in his mind, but more than likely, you know, players just saw some normal creatures and everything was standard fare, so I'd be too surprised if we saw too many changes out of either of them. I know Noble's certainly an aficionado for sideboarding in Limited, but it looks like even he's just going to go ahead and ship it right on back. All right, looks like getting ready to jump straight on in to game number 2 here with the players. We'll see Preston presumably on the play in this game. He could potentially choose to be on the draw, of course. This is sealed, and certainly sealed is a reasonable format to take the draw on in most formats. Obviously, this is a new format, so you'd have to have your own opinions about the viability of taking the draw, but more than likely, we're going to see Preston on the play here for this game. Taking a look at a hand here. Can't get a good look at very many of the cards. It looks a little land-light, this hand as well. Looks like he'll keep it, though. He'll start things off with a swamp, and then send the turn back over to Noble Island, the card off the top here for Preston. We'll see if he wants to follow it up with anything here on turn number 2. Looks like Island will be the play. That was, of course, the draw for turn. And he'll start things off with an, Afarica? Starts with an A. I know that for sure. Did Noble keep a one-lander here too? Oh my lord. What am I watching? This certainly must have been a one-lander with an Elysian Caryatid here on the draw from Noble. But boy, we're just seeing a lot of mana problems here from these players in this match. We might see a couple really quick games of Femia, the Cacophony. I knew it was something like that, APH, something along those lines. It's a 2-mana 2/1 with flying. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile an enchantment card from your graveyard. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So, looks like Noble looking for a land. Now he found one. I'd be surprised to see anything other than Elysian Caryatid. And sure enough, here is the Elysian Caryatid. Of course, be remiss to keep a one-land hand without an Elysian Caryatid on 2. And now, Preston going to go ahead and draw 3 cards. He'll have to discard 2 cards unless he discards an enchantment card. Looks like he will just be discarding an enchantment card. This one, Sentinel's Eyes. This one, an excellent one to discard. Of course, it being in your graveyard means that he'll be able to escape it for a single white mana and exiling 2 other cards from his graveyard. So he's certainly going to be getting his value here. As now, he'll go ahead and attack for 2. And of course, he could have exiled it, or he can exile it to Ephemia, the Cacophony, if he wants to create a 2/2 with zombie token as well. So that's certainly something that he might be in the market for. 2/2 zombies, certainly very effective. It'll save you the mana and all that as well. So certainly pretty good. Here is an Eidolon of Premonition from Preston. That one could eventually draw him 3 cards, but that's very far away, obviously. For now, it's just going to be a 1-mana 1/2. So nothing Noble has to worry too much about. Looks like Noble going to go ahead and cast his rare. And it looks like he is going to be able to follow it up with an enchantment. So we'll get to trigger the Constellation. We'll see if he wants to make his Thaumaturge into a copy of the Elysian Caryatid. No, he's going to copy the Ephemia, the Cacophony, which is going to be certainly very, very good. So there's quite a bit going on as we have the Protean Thaumaturge enter the battlefield. This is a 2-mana 1/1 with Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may have it become a copy of another target creature, except it has this ability. So it is currently an Ephemia, the Cacophony. And then, of course, we saw Noble cast another 2-mana blue Saga, the Ordeal of Meliad's Ordeal, something along those lines. I'm actually not 100% sure the name on that one. This one, however, says when it enters the battlefield, it scries 2. Then you get it's the second chapter, you name a card, and then on the third chapter, if you cast the card with the chosen name this turn, you draw 2 cards. And then the fourth chapter, just actually don't remember the text on the fourth chapter, to be fair, so I definitely forget the fourth chapter. It looks like Noble is going ahead and getting his scrying done now. as a Karametra's... Oh, that was a Karametra's Blessing from Preston that prevented the Protean Thaumaturge from actually being able to copy the Ephemia, because, yeah, the Karametra's Blessing gave the Ephemia hexproof because it is an enchantment. So, definitely pretty interesting interaction here. Preston looking at an Omen of the Sea at the front of his hand currently. Still no zombies with the Ephemia, unfortunately. Just going to go ahead and have to think about what he wants to do. Metamai's Prophecy, that's the one. So, first chapter is scry 2, second chapter, choose a card name. Third chapter, whenever you cast a spell with the chosen name for the first time this turn, draw 2 cards. 4 mana, look at the top card of each player's library. So, pretty standard play there. Metamai's Prophecy, nothing too crazy. It looks like Preston will escape his Sentinel's Eyes onto the Ephemia. And here comes an Omen of the Sea. Just going to go ahead, cast that on his main phase. He'll scry 2. Looks like an island. Looks like neither of them anything that he's particularly looking for. And then he'll go ahead and draw a swamp. Send it back over to Noble's. Ephemia's or Metamai's Prophecy will tick to 2. We'll have to get a word from production as to what card Noble actually named with the Metamai's Prophecy. Metamai's Prophecy, certainly a very cool card in Limited. I'm a big fan of just the play patterns that this card brings. I think it's very interesting. So we'll see what he actually named with it. Noble looking at a couple interesting cards here that he could choose to play on this turn. I see an Omen of the Hunt. That one stands out to me as being pretty good. Noble named Shimmerwing Chimera with Metamai's Prophecy. Now that is some sick value. So that means that Noble is going to get to cast Shimmerwing Chimera next turn, and then the Shimmerwing Chimera is going to, on his next turn, return the Metamai's Prophecy to his hand. So he's essentially just going to get to do that whole thing all over again and essentially get to draw some cards for free, as we'll see the Shimmerwing Chimera pulled up on screen now. Now we see the Devourer of Memories coming into play here for Noble. We saw this out of Josh in the last round. It's a 3-mana 2/1. Whenever a card goes from your library to your graveyard, you get to... it gets +1/+1 until end of turn and cannot be blocked. And then... Oh, no, excuse me. This is Eutropia, I think. Yes, it is Eutropia. Just got that art a little bit confused there. Yes, Eutropia the twice favored. Eutropia twice favored. This card is absurd. For sure. Eutropia has a 3-mana 2/2. It has Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That creature gains flying until end of turn. So this card certainly going to be very, very powerful here from Noble. And obviously that Shimmerwing Chimera is going to be coming down next turn because he named it with the Metamai's Prophecy. So Preston can be certain that that Shimmerwing Chimera is going to come down next turn. Oh, dear Lord. What on earth just happened here? Oh, boy. I don't know what that card is, I confess. So here comes an attack 4/1 with the... Man, I'm blanking on the name. The Blank of Philosophy. Alright, so here comes that Shimmerwing Chimera. He'll draw 2 cards, as he did name that it was coming down. Still no land here for Noble, unfortunately. Looks like Noble's just going to be missing his land drop this turn, which is going to be a huge boon to Preston, especially with that huge unsummon there. Sea God's Scorn. I actually haven't seen this one yet. 4 blue sorcery. Return up to 3 target creatures and or enchantments to their owner's hands. That is absolutely backbreaking against an opponent who's missing land drops. So Noble down to 13. He had to redeploy his threats this turn, or he had to redeploy his Shimmerwing Chimera this turn, obviously, because he's got to draw the 2 cards, you know? He Metamai predicted it. It's a prophecy. It has to happen. You know, I'm excited for some potential sweet Metamai's Prophecy bluffs in the future. You know, Metamai's Prophecy, naming the 4-mana Board Wrath or whatever. That seems really cool. Naming some dumb bomb that your opponent, might not be able to beat, like a Heliod or something like that, seems awesome. So, I think that there's a lot of room for some really cool play with Metamized Prophecy, along with, just naming a really good card and seeing it go to work. Meanwhile, taking a look at Preston's hand, we very well might be seeing Elspeth on this turn out of Preston. Looks like he's just going to go ahead and settle for Scavenging Harpy. Scavenging Harpy, of course, nothing too crazy. He's got a Heliod's Punishment in his hand. If he wants to deploy that, he could try and, pinch Noble's mana with that Elysian Caryatid. But he's not willing to deploy it yet. Oh, this is a Pharika spawn. So this is the Pharika spawn that I thought the Scavenging Harpy was earlier. Man, those cards look pretty similar, but I'll get the hang of it. Obviously, things are still developing. So Pharika spawn, a 4-mana 3/4. That's all of its ability on its face, but it escapes for 6 mana and exiling 3 cards, and it escapes with 2+1/+1 counters on it. When it does escape, each opponent sacrifices a non-Gorgon creature. So very, very powerful. And now we see Eutropia re-enter the battlefield for Noble. And now he's just going to go ahead and Endless Agony, Endless Agony, something along those lines, to take down the Cacophony there from Preston. Oh, it was just a Mire's Grasp? Oh, I suppose it is a Mire's Grasp. That art looks strange to me from here, but I suppose Mire's Grasp it is. It'll take down the Ephemia, the Cacophony. And of course, the Mire's Grasp will immediately just fall off. He'll go ahead and redeploy that Metamized Prophecy. That'll put a +1/+1 counter on the Shimmerwing Chimera with the Eutropia. But then he'll just go ahead and he'll just go ahead and scry 2. That'll leave both cards on top for Noble. Back over to Preston. We'll see if now's the time for the Heliod's Punishment. That Eutropia looks like a pretty juicy target, but looks like he's just going to go ahead and remove that 4-power creature from the battlefield. I believe that one will gain him 3 life as well. And here comes Elspeth. So this one's going to be tough for Noble to beat. Elspeth, of course, one of the best mythics in the set. It's got Escape. It's going to be hard for Noble to really ever deal with permanently. It's going to keep coming back over and over again. And with the Pharika spawn already in play, he's got a really powerful blocking engine with it. And yeah, Preston's just happy to start getting in here with his creatures as we get Elspeth's Sun's Nemesis pulled up on screen currently for you guys. It is 2 white for Planeswalker with 5 loyalty. It's got a -1 up to 2 target creatures you control. Each get +2/+1 until end of turn. It's got a -2, create 2 1/1 white human soldier tokens, and a -3 of you gain 5 life. Of course, it escapes for 6 mana and 4 other cards in graveyard. And it looks like Preston went ahead and used the -1 to give the 2 creatures in play +2/+1 until end of turn. So that was a mighty big attack, putting Noble all the way down to a single life point. And I don't think Noble's really going to have much of a way out of this one. I mean, Elspeth is just going to be so hard to beat, and he might be able to stabilize for a turn or two, but it's going to be very, very hard for him to actually win the game while dealing with this Elspeth. So looks like he's going to start things off with the Protean Thaumaturge. He'll think about how to follow things up. He's got 4 mana here to spend, potentially 5 with the Elysian Caryatid, but of course he probably needs that one to block. Alright, and he's just going to go ahead and deploy a 4-mana 4/4 as well here, so he's got some reasonable blocks now. Of course, Preston has the ability to -2 his Elspeth, with your opponent at a single life point, creating 2 1/1s. Very, very potent. Noble still has this Omen of the Hunt in his hand. He's spent the entire game with it in his hand, but still pinched on mana. Makes it very awkward. He's definitely wanted to be able to go find that land drop with it, but just been unable to all game. Pretty unfortunate, to say the least. Preston thinking about how he wants to continue developing his board. I think I'm a pretty big fan of Elspeth -2 this turn, and then a potential Elspeth -2 again next turn, and just try and go really big. You're at 23 life. There's definitely an argument to be made here for Elspeth -1 and just attack and force your opponent into some subpar blocks. Although with the 4/4 in play on Noble's side of the battlefield, that gets a little bit less appealing, I think. Looks like Preston's going to go ahead and Sentinel's Eyes his Pharika's Spawn. Definitely an interesting choice. With an Elspeth in play, you certainly want to have cards in your graveyard, but looks like he's going to value the Vigilance and the +1/+1 on this creature quite highly currently. Of course, this does mean that if he chooses to -1 the Elspeth, it'll get up to, well, it'll be pretty big. It's currently a 4/5. It'll go up to a 6/6. So that'll be a very hard creature for Noble to profitably block with a board of a 4/4, 2/1/1s, and a 2/2, obviously. So you'd probably have to chump block the smaller creature and then just choose to put like 2 or 3 creatures in front of the Pharika's Spawn. But it looks like Preston is just going to go with my original plan here. Go ahead and put 2 1/1 human creature tokens onto the battlefield. Of course, these are lethal attackers. See if he wants to do anything else. Looks like the answer is no. As end step, looks like Noble's tapping for an Omen. Oh, this is before blocks. So he did attack with Pharika's Spawn. So this is before blocks. I see. He's going to Omen of the Dead back his Shimmerwing Chimera. Okay, so Omen of the Dead will pick up Shimmerwing Chimera, and then we'll see Noble potentially go to blocks here. Oh, Indomitable will. Yikes. After Noble had declared the block, but that is not going to end particularly well for Noble. Means that Preston here has a very, very big Pharika's Spawn. Minimize Prophecy now ticks to 3. I'm not certain what the chosen card was this go around, but we'll see if Noble elects to cast it. Looks like Noble going to tap 6 mana this turn. He's going to need something pretty good as Brineborn Giant. Oh, Witness of Tomorrow. This is Witness of Tomorrow, excuse me. So Witness of Tomorrow's was the name, and he's going to go ahead and cast it here. And then he'll go ahead and follow things up with an extra Omen of the Dead. Will Noble. Making these blocks a little bit more reasonable for Noble. He does have the requisite creatures on board to be able to not die as of current. Of course, he does get his Constellation trigger. He gets to put a +1/+1 counter on something. Of course, he cannot attack. Preston does have 4 lethal attackers on his side of the battlefield. Still thinking about the Eutropia trigger. Of course, he does get +1/+1 counters, so that seems particularly good. He's got a removal spell in his hand, a Drag to the Underworld. And it looks like he is going to attack, so he's going to go ahead and take down the Elspeth here after he gives his creature flying. Preston, also very notably, is quite close to being able to sacrifice his creature here to draw 3 cards. And that's certainly going to be very good. He actually does have the requisite mana to be able to do that if he ever finds the time to do so. He's also still got this Omen of the Sea hanging out in play that he could sacrifice to Scry 2 at any point he finds the time. So Preston's got to know that something's up here, as Noble did just make an attack that would leave him dead on board had he had nothing. Here comes a Brineborn Giant from Preston. This a 5/6 that Noble's going to have a pretty tough time dealing with in and of itself. And now we'll see. Wow, Preston only attacks with the Pharika spawn. Looks like he sniffed out the trick successfully, as Noble's going to going to drag from the underworld down the Pharika's spawn. Using the Elysian Caryatid to tap for 2 mana there, because he does have a creature with power 4 or greater. So Metamized Prophecy will go off. He'll get to look at the top card of both players' libraries. And of course, the Metamized Prophecy will go into his graveyard, not hang out way over there, whatever it's doing. So now Noble knows a little bit of what's to come here, and presumably Preston will be sacrificing this Omen of the Sea this turn to get his Scry 2 in, assuming he remembers that he can. 4 mana. I assume that this will just be the 4/4 that Noble's been happily playing all game. He would love to find some cards with enchantments so that he can get some constellation triggers as well. He's got a Shimmerwing Chimera in his hand, as well as still having that Omen of the Hunt. And it looks like he's going to send the turn back. He's got that Omen of the Hunt ready for a constellation trigger with the Eutropia and the Thaumaturge. Oh, Heliod. Looks like Preston's taking a look at that Heliod. He puts it on the bottom? Oh my. Perhaps that was Daxos. I believe that was Daxos, actually. So. Certainly makes much more sense to put Daxos on bottom of your library as opposed to Heliod. And yes, it is, in fact, Daxos that goes to the bottom there. So now Preston draws a removal spell. He has the ability to exile a creature or planeswalker here, and then he'll get to look at the top card of his library and decide if he wants to leave it there or put it into his graveyard. Essentially a surveil. However, he has to decide if he wants to cast it, and if he does, what does he want to target? Witness of Tomorrow, certainly threatening, as well as Eutropia looking very threatening on this board, especially with your opponent having 5 mana available to them currently because of the Elysian Caryatid being able to tap 4/2. He's going to be kind of between a rock and a hard place here as to if he has any good attacks, which I think the answer is probably not. We have the biggest creature on the board if nothing happens, like if nothing changes. We do have the biggest creature on the board with this Brine Giant. Looks like we're going to start things off with Sentinel's Eyes. Go ahead and exile 2 cards from our graveyard, pay the white mana, slap the Sentinel's Eyes onto our Brine Giant. This will make it into a 6/7 now. Very, very big. Of course, E2 Extinction being an instant means that you can somewhat happily make a nice attack here. And of course, this is assuming that the E2 Extinction is the card he drew, and I did see correctly. I do believe it is, though. I, of course, cannot be 100% sure. So it looks like here is an attack with the Brine Giant. And now, pass priority over to Noble, see if he has anything he wants to do. Noble looks like he's going to go ahead and declare a block with the Protean Thaumaturge, and then he'll cast his Omen of the Hunt. This allows him to grab a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped. So nice little bit of ramp here, as well as triggering his constellation with Eutropia and the Protean Thaumaturge. So the Protean Thaumaturge will get a +1/+1 counter and become a Brine Giant. Means that he's just going to be able to bounce off the Brine Giant here. The +1/+1 given from Sentinel's Eyes will counter out the +1/+1 given by the Eutropia, and then sure enough, that is enough for Preston to go ahead and fire off the Eat to Extinction that will put the Protean Thaumaturge into exile, and then he will surveil, more or less, the island onto the bottom. Oh, and funnily enough, Noble actually knew about the Eat to Extinction from the Metamized Prophecy. So that's certainly interesting there. So he kind of played into the card that he knew Preston had, but more or less you have to do what you have to do. Still no attacks here from Noble, as he'll just deploy a Shimmerwing Chimera, and now Noble's going to start to get a lot of value with the Shimmerwing Chimera, with this Omen of the Hunt and these 2 Omen of the Deads hanging out in play for Noble, and the Shimmerwing Chimera going to start bouncing them every turn, and then he'll be able to start redeploying them with Eutropia in play. He's going to be able to start applying a relatively fast clock here if he starts putting counters on cards like, say, his 4/4 there, or even Witness of Tomorrows. Looks like Preston is going to escape his Pharika's spawn. This will force Noble to sacrifice a non-Gorgon creature when it enters the battlefield, and I think that Elysian Caryatid has done its job thus far. And yes, looks like Noble agrees. The Elysian Caryatid will leave play. He'll go ahead and tap it for 2 mana before he sacrifices it. This makes sense to me. We'll see if Noble has anything he wants to do before he changes phases. He does have this Wolf Willow that he could sacrifice on his turn if he ever runs out of action. Alright, Shimmerwing Chimera is going to pick up his Omen of the Dead, and then he'll go ahead and draw a card for turn. 4 creatures in play for Noble, 5 creatures in play for Preston. Noble still at 1 life. This will be a crazy game if Noble manages to win it. Thinking as to what to do now. Looks like he's going to start by redeploying Omen of the Dead. He's going to be getting back his Elysian Caryatid, and he'll get a +1/+1 counter to put wherever he deems fit. Looks like it is going to go onto the 4/4, so that'll become a 5/5 now. And then he'll spend 2 mana and redeploy that Elysian Caryatid. Going to follow it up with... Oh, I'm not certain what that card is, to be honest. Not getting a good look at it here, but I'm sure production will update us here in just a moment. A draw from Preston. Oh, it's an Entrancing Liar. Interesting. Okay. That's certainly a very, very relevant card on this board, as it'll allow Noble to tap down, well, probably just a 1/1 for now, but then he'll be able to untap and tap down like a Brine Giant once he has the 5 requisite mana, or I suppose 6 in this current state, to be able to tap down the Brine Giant. Alright, looks like Noble just allowed his opponent to go to combat. So yeah, before combat, Noble is going to Liar to tap down a 1/1 human. And then Preston is still going to go ahead and send in with the all-out swing. Here comes the team. So now Noble's going to have to make some blocks. We'll see how he decides to line this up. If Preston has much of anything in his hand, this combat could go very poorly for Noble here. We'll see how he decides to set things up. Looks like he's going to set up a double block on the Pharika's spawn. Elysian Caryatid as a chump block. The Shimmerwing Chimera will take out the 1/2, and then the Witness of Tomorrow's planning on blocking the 1/1. Looks like Preston will go ahead and play the 7 mana to draw 3 cards here. Very powerful, of course. That's going to be a lot of action for him to be able to refuel. And then Preston will get his choice, whether he wants to take out the 5/5 or the Eutropia. He will choose the 5/5 for now. This will allow Noble to potentially escape it, or theoretically get it back with his Omen of the Dead that he can bounce with the Shimmerwing Chimera on his turn as well. So Noble's got his own engine online here. Even though Preston did just draw 3 cards, I think Noble's going to have plenty of things to spend his mana on in the upcoming turns. And if Preston doesn't do anything else to develop his board this turn, it means that there's only going to be one creature that's going to be able to attack. Well, Noble does decide to untap the Entrancing Lyre here. So he's giving Preston 2 attacking bodies on the next turn, but I'd expect that we're going to see some attacks on this turn here from Noble. He did pick up his Omen of the Dead once again with that Shimmering Chimera, so he has the ability to return his 4/4 to his hand. It looks like he's going to start things off by doing exactly that. Omen of the Dead. He'll give his Shimmering Chimera a +1/+1 counter and then return to the hand. It'll go into a 4/4, enters the battlefield. Hello, James.
Hello.
Welcome. Have a seat.
Thanks, man.
All right, we are in the middle of game number 2 here. This one's wild. We have Noble at 1 life.
That's true.
And he's doing his best to stabilize against Preston here. He's got a Eutropia in play. He's got a Shimmering Chimera and Omen of the Dead. Multiple Omens in play that he's kind of using as an engine, though Preston did just draw 3 cards last turn, and now he's going to be able to untap and start deploying them. So the quality of these cards could very easily determine the outcome of the game, but Preston is going to need to find a way to chip through that last point of damage here relatively soon. Noble's been at 1 for probably 6 or 7 turns
Really?
at this point. Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a long time. It's been a long grind. It's been very close. So all right.
And Noble's up a game?
And Noble is up a game, correct.
Okay.
So
Oh, he's thinking about tapping mana.
yeah, looks like a Funeral Rites pulled to the front
I like
of
that card.
Preston's hand. Certainly a very good one. He'll draw 2 cards and lose 2 life.
Put 2 cards in the bin.
Yeah, mill 2. He also has an Elspeth in his graveyard. That's
That-
very worth noting.
That's great.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this game.
I just went out against the Elspeth Heliod Ashiok deck.
Didn't you just lose to Ashiok?
I don't know how I won.
All right, so now looks like Preston seeing what else he wants to do this turn. He did find some more resources. He's down to 17 now. Noble turning the corner a little bit, but 17
putting a clock out there.
17 is still quite a high life total. He's got this Entrancing Lyre in play still, too. He is threatening to be able to tap down, well, I guess just the 1/1, as he is missing the ability to pay the full 5 mana to be able to tap, or the full 6 mana to be able to tap down the Brine Giant at current. Preston, 2 mana tapped. Ooh, 3 mana, Ichthyomorphosis. So Ichthyomorphosis going to turn this Shimmerwing Chimera into a 0/1 fish. That's bad news for Noble. This is really the engine that Noble's been relying on to kind of keep propelling him into this game, and Ichthyomorphosis is going to be able to shut that down immediately here.
Card's real annoying.
Yeah, Ichthyomorphosis is very, very good. A 3 mana, turn your thing into a 0/1. It just deals with the problem. So Shimmerwing Chimera, it does still have a +1/+1 counter. So it's a 1/2, I guess.
Oh, okay, got it. Those are +1/+1 counters.
Correct.
I thought it was 5/1/1 counters on it. I'm like,
Lord.
Kind of looks like a 5, but now I'm in the loop.
Yeah. So here comes an attack with the Brine Giant. Preston attempting to give it +1/+1 here, and hexproof in combat. We'll see. I assume that Noble's just going to go ahead and make a block here.
I certainly would.
Yeah. It's a little bit better than dying. Looks like Witness of Tomorrow's the card he's going to decide to chump block with here. And then Entrancing Lyre will tap down the 1/1 on end of turn. And I'm not certain why the Starlit Mantle hit the graveyard there. I do believe it should enchant a creature.
Yeah, that can be rectified easily.
Yeah, it stays on the
There we
Brine
go.
Giant. Correct. It only gives hexproof until end of turn, but it does stay on the Brine Giant and continue to give it +1/+1. So we now have a
Weird mechanic.
7-power Brine Giant. Of course, Noble has an Entrancing Lyre, but spending 7 mana is no trivial feat. especially when you're at 1 life. Here comes Cetessan Champion from Noble. So now every time he plays an enchantment, he'll start to grow it. And then I believe that this is the it's the Lion Myers, the -3/-3 enchantment that I can't remember the name of.
Neither, man.
Yeah, of course. Great.
Listen,
so,
if I had help for you, I would help you.
yes, that's
here
my
we
bad.
are.
But giving the giant -3/-3 certainly pretty relevant here.
Yeah.
And it will, in fact, grow the Cetessan Champion. Now with the giant being given -3/-3, it's only have 4 power. Myers Grasp, thank you very much, means that Noble's actually going to be able to theoretically Lyre it, but Noble just decided to leave the 1/1 tapped down, not deciding that now's the time to spend that much mana. He's got more omens to crack to get some scries in,
Yeah.
so he's got plenty of value going on, and he did get a nice attack for 5 in there as well. So, of course, the attack for 5 means that the 5/5 does now outsize the Brown Giant after that Myers Grasp did enter the battlefield.
It's a good start.
Certainly. Having the biggest creature, a very big deal.
Almost at any time, but especially when you are at 1.
Out 1, yeah, out 1 being a big deal.
Yeah.
And Eutropia still in play and still providing value. Eutropia has been absolutely absurd this game for Noble. It's provided so much value. It's put +1/+1 counters on so many creatures. Noble's got a pretty nice chump block lined up with this ichthyomorphized Chimera here.
And he casted that card, which we will figure out soon.
Yeah, I don't remember that one, to be honest. Looks like we're going to go ahead and bring back a Pharika's Spawn here. Will Preston, Noble forced to sacrifice a non-Gorgon creature. Looks like the Spellwing Chimera with the Ichthyomorphosis on it will be the chosen. That card is Dawn Evangel. It's a 3-mana 2/3. Whenever a creature dies, if an aura you controlled was attached to it, return target creature card with CMC 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand.
Pretty okay.
Pretty okay. Of course, most of Preston's graveyard has been exiled to fuel the escape cards that he's really been using very effectively this game. He's had an Elspeth in his graveyard pretty much all game, but he's been choosing to bring back cards like Sentinel's Eyes and Pharika's Spawn. This is the second time Pharika's Spawn has been escaped, so you can really tell this game is game has been quite a lot.
I do enjoy Pharika Spawn.
Yeah, Pharika's Spawn is absolutely excellent. And now Noble will attack, and Preston will attack. Noble happy to make the trade with his Cetessan Champion, and then go ahead, scry 2 on end step by sacrificing his Omen of the Hunt. Top and bottom are the looks there. We'll see if Noble wants to untap his Harp on this turn. Preston deployed a lot of lethal attackers here, so untapping the Harp seems kind of suboptimal to me, given that you're just going to have to tap something else anyway, but you have to spend mana to do it. Looks like he will untap the Harp, though. Means that potentially he's going to need something else to be able to get there. Here comes a 2-mana 2/3. That the name is escaping me.
That's the name.
Yeah, the 2-mana 2/3.
Yeah.
It can pay 4 mana and make a land and XX, where X is equal to the number of enchantments you control.
Oh yeah, this is the dumb 2-mana uncommon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's going to be pretty relevant here, as Noble's going to be able to make blockers in order to prevent himself from dying to the 4 lethal creatures on board for Preston. 1 card left in his hand for Noble. Destiny Spinner, not the name that I am forgetting. Looks like he's going to give a +1/+1 counter to his 5/5 and then attack for 6 in the air here. Will Noble. This will be lethal next turn if he manages to string together another enchantment and manages to survive the turn.
Yeah.
Preston down to 6 now. We'll see if Noble has any follow-up. Looks like the answer is no. He could have sacrificed his Wolfwillow Haven in order to make a 2/2 wolf, but it looks like he's just going to hold up his Destiny Spinner activations. in order to try and use some of these lands to block. And
He's got a few of them.
Yeah, he's only going to be able to get one land into play here to be able to block. So he's going to have to use his Lyre to tap down a creature, and then he's going to have to activate the Destiny Spinner to be able to block another creature as it stands on board, and that will leave him alive if Preston has nothing else going on, and then we're looking for an enchantment to win the game. So Noble has positioned himself in such a way that he can potentially win this game. I mean, Noble was at 1 when Preston was at 23 a long time ago in this game, so the fact that Noble's made it back to this point is certainly impressive in and of itself. Let's see how Preston wishes to proceed. This is 4 mana. He's thinking about card from the graveyard. Elspeth, of course, escapes for 6 mana and exiling 4 other cards from the graveyard. And it looks like that will be what's happening as Preston escaping Elspeth here. Noble very likely to just say okay to this. Does not provide any real lethal. It doesn't really change the state of things in this board, I don't think. Making 2 1/1s means that Noble's very likely to die next turn, but the plan is still to survive this turn and then kill him. So I think that Noble's actually probably relatively happy that this is Preston's play. I think. So it's going to be impossible to beat in the long game, but I think Noble was already planning on this not being a long game. So at the beginning of combat, Noble will use his Lyre to tap down a 1/1 human, so probably regretting untapping that Lyre for what it's worth. And I don't think that Preston declared any attacks, so Noble's just going to get to scry 2. He's looking for any enchantment to try and find lethal here. And he will leave a card on top. So presumably, we'll see Noble finding a lethal spell. Here comes Mire's Grasp. That is a lethal spell if Preston doesn't have anything. Mire's Grasp, your Dawn Evangel. Give this flying and attack for lethal. Does Preston have a way to prevent this? He's thinking.
A lot.
And no, he does not. What an absolutely insane game. That was absolutely absurd. So, whew, that was a crazy game. Well played, Noble. That was wild.
I wish I saw the rest of it.
Yeah, you really should have seen the rest of it. And for those of you, in case you didn't see the rest of it, like Mr. James Walton, you'll be sure to be able to find the PodVod later on YouTube later tonight. So if you're interested in catching any of the magic you've missed, I highly recommend you go check out the PodVod. And if you're watching the PodVod, make sure you come check us out live. We're live every Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I think that we're probably going to be streaming a couple more pre-releases here this weekend. So be sure to follow the social media, the Twitter, the Discord, all that, in order to keep updated as to when we're going to be streaming these pre-releases. We're going to leave you guys with a little bit of hot damn scandal. We'll be back very shortly for our third and final round. Make sure you guys don't go anywhere.
The bottom fell out of the clouds today and the rain came down like a mirror. One big sheet and it shattered on the ground. Now it's 7 years of bad luck all over this town. It's collection time on all of your debts and you can't get by just talking. Your smile don't work and your car don't start and your doors ain't keeping you alone. No, not even if you lock them. No, not even if you lock them. When you're tapped into that bit of fame, just about anything feels good. light shining on a lost boy's eyes. They reflected oh so pretty, but it's cold behind them golden shores, and the sweet light wasn't nothing more than their own damn wishing, 'cause they just don't listen. Now wish on your candles, pray to your God, cry for your mama, put $1 on the bar. It feels like breathing, but the only good feeling ain't a gamble, is a sin. So I think I play it safe and get a gin. I'll take the devil for a spin. When you're tapped into that bitter vein, just about anything feels good. For some the morning brings another day, but all it does for me is shine an ugly light around in the room that I've been hiding in. Now I take the easy way, yeah, that gets harder every day, but I ain't here to fix myself, I'm just trying to blind these eyes from hell. When you're tapped into that bitter vein, just about anything feels good. I like to swim at the bottom of the barrel. I like to sleep in hidey holes and barroom stalls. I like to hear the piano playing in the bloody little dawn. I like to wake up with the devil and drink him till he's gone. The queen is drunk and someone armed the pawns. Oh, the truth they say is an acquired taste, a vice I've never thought to own. There is no clean air left, so we filter it through cigarettes. but the gambler's mercy keeps us blind and fade. lying on my bruises, defined my edges against skies of gray. But now my worries are all far away. The sky is clear, and I begin to fade. Once I believed in paradise, a place where I would never feel no pain, a state of mind I'd never have to change. But now it all looks alright, and I begin to fade.
Alrighty, welcome back for round number 3 here. Paradise Games. We got Noble. He's returning. This is our 2-0 match for to wrap things off. We have Cade versus Noble. Cade is playing blue-green. Noble playing Sultai here in this final match. Cade's got quite a few sweet ones in his deck, so we'll see how Noble manages to deal with those, but I'll leave those as a surprise for you guys out there in the audience. Let's see, looks like both players starting things off with a forest. Looks like an island to follow things up from Cade, and Noble will do the same thing as Cade. We'll just draw a card on end step here, getting a little bit of extra value as he slams a Renata on turn 3. Oh yeah, that's not gonna work. Renata not going to be reasonable on turn 3. As here's a Setessan Champion from Noble on turn 3. That one, of course, does actually cost 3 mana. Cade will follow it up with an Omen of the Sea instead of that Renata. He'll draw, and then he will draw. Cade pretty successfully churning through his library thus far, but he might not have a land drop. Nope, he'll go ahead and play a Dryad of the Iliad Grove here and play 2 lands for turn. Of course, Dryad of the Iliad Grove allows you to play an extra land for turn, and then it allows all of his lands to tap for essentially a mana of any color, though. That's certainly not super relevant when you're only playing a 2-color deck. Alright, and then Setessan Champion getting sufficiently big here, but still not quite big enough to attack through the Dryad. Only 3 power so far. And now I expect that we'll see this Renata come down here from Cade. Ooh, looks like he's thinking about potentially a Brine or a Witness of Tomorrows. So he will go ahead, cast the 3/4 flyer, determines that's the plan he wants to be on for now. Still no Renata. He's leaving that one in his hand. Of course, Noble does know about it from the oopsie on the 3rd turn of the game. Here's an attack for 3 from Noble. Certainly interesting. Definitely baiting a block of some kind out of Cade, although with so many flash auras in the set, obviously this one has a lot of things that can go wrong for Cade if he declares any blocks. So I'd be a little surprised to see any blocks. So I think Cade will just take 3, and Noble happy to just have him take the 3, and then he'll pass the turn over to Cade, holding up Omen of the Hunt to go ahead and go grab some extra lands. He's also got a Thassa's Intervention in his hand, I believe. So here comes this Renata. Noble's going to give this one a read, and Noble says, yeah, that's enough text for me to go ahead and Thassa's Intervention it. Counter it unless you pay 4 mana, and Cade, of course, no 4 mana to pay. He's left with only a Soul Guide Lantern in hand. Not particularly excellent, but he should be able to find a way to cycle that into another card. Here comes another attack for 3 with the Setessan Champion from Noble. This time he will go ahead and flash in the Omen of the Hunt here. Setessan Champion will get 1 counter, and then a Swamp will enter the battlefield here. Setessan Champion doing a lot of work on this battlefield so far for Noble. He'll play an Island for turn. Of course, the card he did draw off of the Setessan Champion. And now Cade has sort of been put into a racing situation. Looks like on his upkeep, he's going to sacrifice that Omen of the Sea. Looks like Starlit Mantle to the bottom. We'll draw a card. Ooh, I think that was the Labyrinth of Sekthos. Oh no, it's not. It is the 4 mana. Look at the top 4. You can put a creature or a land into your hand from among them. Looks like Uro is a nice one. It is a creature or a land, very notably, I do believe, on that card. I could be wrong, however, but I think it's a creature or a land. All right, Noble going to go ahead and strip that Uro out of Cade's hand. And that's certainly a very important part of Noble's ability to win this game. Uro, of course, absolutely absurd bomb. Cade gonna go ahead, take a look at the top card, and then here is an attack for 3 in the air. He's got a Moss Viper hanging out on defense here. Pretty happy to just leave that one chilling in play. It's gonna pretty happily trade for the Setessan Champion at any given point. Although Mire's Grasp will take down the Viper. That'll allow Noble to draw another card. The Setessan Champion gets bigger once again. Noble's really going off with this Setessan Champion this game, as Cade's failed to find a way to remove it. Cade's still chipping in the air every turn for now, as another Mire's Grasp going to shrink down the Witnesses of Tomorrow's. And now Noble's very firmly in the driver's seat in this race, as Cade no longer has really much of a clock at all. Looks like just going to be at the attack with the Setessan Champion. Cade happy to block. And then Noble will follow things up with the Voracious Typhon. Now Cade looking to scry 1 on his upkeep with the Witness. He'll leave that one on top. He will draw it. We'll see what it is. Ooh, looks to be a Caliphie. Caliphie quite good here, although it's far from the almighty wrath of God that I feel like he was really looking for here. I mean, he's just gotten absolutely slammed by the Setessan Champion this game. It's just so good. And of course the Caliphie is reasonably sized, but it's far from the best creature on this board. Noble's hand looking pretty strong at this point, as I think Noble's thinking about animating some lands here to start attacking. Cade is down to 13, not a particularly high life total. So yeah, here comes an animated land. Oh, maybe rethinking. Noble still deciding on what he wants to do this turn. He is certainly very far ahead, so he's really deciding what the best way to close this game is before Cade actually finds a way back into it. And it looks like animate 2 lands is going to be his decision. So he's got I only count 2 enchantments in play as of current. He's got, the Mire's Grasp is a 3rd. So these are 3/3 lands that he's attacking with, and he's just attacking with everything. The Witness of Tomorrow's happily to jump in front of that Setessan Champion. And he's got a Dryad and the Caliphie. So looks like Caliphie happy to eat that creature, and then Dryad looks like it'll just bounce off a land. Cade will take 7 in the exchange, putting him down to 6, but all things considered, not a terrible combat for Cade, I do not think. Although I think Noble potentially should have gotten in with that 1/1 there as well. I think it's unlikely that Cade would have gone for that value block, and I think he was probably happy to do so if he did. Ooh. Here comes Hydra's Growth from Cade. This is the 3-mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, puts a +1/+1 counter on enchanted creature, and at the beginning of each of your upkeeps, you double the number of +1/+1 counters on that creature. So now Cade has a real plan here to end up outsizing whatever's Noble's got going on. Now we'll see another Diviner enter the battlefield here for Noble. He'll make 2 more lands. These ones are certainly 3/3s as well because of the Omen of the Dead, and this looks like a lethal attack to me from that side of the battlefield. And yep, sure is. The Hydra's Growth a little threatening there towards the end of the game, but Noble able to slam the door quickly enough that Cade unable to claw his way back into that game. Although those decks did look pretty powerful there at a glance. Players going to go ahead, take a glance at their sideboards now after seeing how that first game played out. I think on Cade's side, obviously I don't know any of the cards in these players' sideboards, but I think after seeing what happened there, if Cade's got any Return to Natures in his hand, I think he's going to be more than ecstatic. I think he's going to be ecstatic to be bringing those in if they aren't already in the main deck. Though, a word of advice I think from me is that you should probably just be main decking Return to Nature in this set. You're always going to have targets, and so I think Cade's going to be happy to bring those in if he doesn't have any. And other things I think that are looking particularly good against Noble are just all of the enchantment removal permanents, removal cards in general seem really, really excellent. So Noble's taking a think about what he wants to bring in, potentially thinking about Uro specifically. That a very hard card to beat, Uro. So Noble's certainly got to think about how he's going to do that. And, he managed to have his cards line up quite well that game. He basically had an answer for whatever Cade was doing, managed to take the Uro out of Cade's hand, as a matter of fact, that game, and just put it straight into exile. But potentially more exile cards need to be brought in for Noble as well, so that he can actually defeat that Uro in Cade's deck. Noble does like to play longer games. He likes to grind, which means that Noble's most likely going to have to fight through an Uro in both of these post-board games. Well, theoretically both of these post-board games. So we'll see if he manages to do so. Looks like Noble has decided how he wishes to sideboard. He's just going to go ahead and shuffle them up. Looks like Cade has finished as well, and now we'll see game number 2 here. I expect that we'll see Cade on the play. I think that was one of the quicker games we've seen tonight, and as far as it was actually relatively close too. The game just happened to progress in a relatively quick way, where Noble just pulled really far ahead with That's the Tested Champion, and the game quickly became all about That's the Tested Champion, just really running away with that game, more or less. I mean, I said it quite a few times, but That's the Tested Champion was absurd, that game. It must have drawn Noble 4 cards, as well as, it's like a 3-mana, 5/8 or what, 5/7 or whatever it is. So it was huge by the end of the game, put a lot of pressure on Cade, and just drew Noble all the fuel he needed to power his way through Cade. So it looks like both players will keep a 7-card hand. We'll have Cade is on the play here in the second game. Metamized Prophecy off the top there for Noble as Cade goes forest into forest. He's got the Dryad of Ilias Grove in his hand. Metamized Prophecy comes down for Noble on the second turn of the game. He'll look at the top 2. Looks like a forest, and didn't get a look at the other one, but he doesn't want it anyway, so no harm, no foul. Cade takes a draw. I assume that we'll see the Dryad come down on this turn. As a matter of fact, we will. Here comes another land, and he'll follow it up with a Viper, 1/1 with Death Touch, that Viper. Noble will name a card now. We'll have to get word from production as to what Noble does decide to name. Obviously, the Chimera was kind of the all-star of his last match, and if you guys missed that last match, I highly recommend going back and watching it, along with this card, Eutropia. So Eutropia will enter the battlefield. Looks like Noble named Wolf Willow Haven with Metamized Prophecy. So Noble planning on spending his next turn doing a little bit of ramping. Of course, he has this Eutropia in play now. So when the enchantment enters the battlefield, this Wolf Willow Haven, of course, he will be able to get a little bit extra value. Here comes Renata from Cade. This card, very, very powerful. He makes an attack. Noble, of course, not willing to trade with his Eutropia, so he will take 3 points of damage. Here comes the Wolf Willow Haven. Noble will draw 2 cards from that Metamized Prophecy, and then put a +1/+1 counter on his Eutropia. It does gain flying until end of turn, so Cade's going to be... I do believe that Renata has reach, if I'm not crazy. It could easily not, but I think I remember that card having reach. So I think the flying not going to be too crazy impactful at current. However, Mire's Grasp taking out the Renata will certainly do the trick. So Renata hits the graveyard. Noble will play a Temple of Deceit here as his land for turn. He'll scry to the bottom. Renata does not have reach. My mistake. Okay, here's an attack for 4 from Eutropia. That'll put Cade down to 16. Cade has 4 forests in play, but remember, they can tap for blue mana because of the Dryad in play. So, as he looks pretty color screwed here, but he actually can cast all of the spells that he wants to. We'll see how he wants to follow things up here. Alright, looks like Cade going to go ahead and slap a Hydra's Growth onto his Dryad, and then he's going to go ahead and start attacking. So Cade kind of throws down the gauntlet with this Hydra's Growth, says, you do not have any way to deal with my Dryad. If you did, you would have killed it already. So, which I actually absolutely agree with that read here. I mean, with nothing but forests in play, you can pretty safely assume that your opponent would have, if they had the ability to, removed your Dryad on their last turn. So I think that this is a very good read from Cade, and I actually really, really like this play. Just slap the Hydra's Growth on it, say, all right, you can't deal with this, so this thing's going to get huge, and it's going to get very out of control. So Noble down to 13 now. Going to be looking for more enchantments to pull ahead with, as well as way to get this Dryad off of the battlefield. Alright, here comes the Setescent Champion now from Noble. Obviously, it was absurd last game, but we'll see if he manages to go off quite as hard with it in this game, as it looks like he does have Pharika's Libation to remove the Hydra's Growth from Cade's creature. He can, of course, choose to sacrifice the Dryad, but certainly that would be a mistake. So Cade ends up getting the better deal out of that, as Pharika's Libation does trade for the Hydra's Growth and equal on mana, but Cade gets a +1/+1 counter out of the deal. Here comes Caliphate from Cade. Of course, the forest can tap for blue because of the Dryad in play once again. So he'll get an attack in for 3, send the turn back. Here's Forest now from Noble, certainly on the back foot this game. It's a hand a little bit full of lands. Here comes the Protean Thaumaturge. This has Constellation. Whenever you play an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, it can become a copy of any other target creature, but it retains that ability. And then Noble's just gonna go ahead and sacrifice his thing, or his Wolf Willow Haven, excuse me, to cash in for a 2/2. Cade's gonna top with an end of turn Omen of the Sea. And then he will draw both of those cards. One from the Omen and one for turn, of course. So the attacks here look a little bit worse on this board now that Noble doesn't have any tapped creatures. Of course, the Protean Thaumaturge is still just a 1/1. So that one not the most threatening creature, though I'm certain that Noble would be happy to trade it with the Moss Viper. I missed what aura got put onto that Moss Viper, now that I mention it. I cannot actually see it as it is under the stupid Viper, unfortunately, but I'm sure production will let us know what that is, as now Cade is sending it into battle. Noble looks like he's lining up a double block to trade with the Viper. Ah, Mantle of the Wolf. Woohoo, that's a good one. So Mantle of the Wolf is a 4-mana or enchantment aura at rare. Chance a creature. Enchanted creature gets +4/+4, and when Mantle of the Wolf is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create 2/2/2 green wolf tokens. So Cade slapped that onto his 1/1 with Death Touch, attacked. Noble felt obligated to trade, so he did just that. He traded, he double blocked, and then Cade got 2 wolves out of the deal. Here comes a Mire's Grasp onto the Callaphy. Callaphy will die. Noble will put a +1/+1 counter on his Tessin champion. He'll draw a card, and the Protean Thaumaturge is going to become a copy of the Dryad Lilied Groves. Interesting. I think that if I were Noble, I would probably elect to have it become a copy of the Tessin champion and just try and hope to rip more enchantments and just really go off, but still, definitely a totally fine play. Here is now the first actual island for Cade. Oof. He can unsummon all of Noble's permanents here. Oh, that is gross. And now he gets to attack for 5, or excuse me, it's more than that, for 7. Putting Noble down to 3. Means that if Noble's turn is just redeploy his creatures, he's technically not dead, as he can line up some blocks and go to 1. But Cade did decide that he wanted to get in that damage while he could. And Entrancing Lyre is going to be lethal, and that means that we'll pick things up, go into a game number 3 here. These games have been sweet. They've been really high power, actually, as a matter of fact. These guys are slinging very, very powerful spells back and forth. These are, of course, 2 of our 2-0 decks for the night, so these guys are playing for that undefeated trophy here. So, of course, these are the upper echelon players / upper echelon decks and whatnot, so the high power sealed decks, if you're looking to know, what colors you might want to be looking into, it looks like blue and green looking very effective here, as these cards seem very, very, very good. Obviously, I know green has a lot of really high-end power level commons, uncommons, and rares, but it's certainly less deep than colors like black. I think black is the deepest color in that pretty much all of the commons are going to be playable in your deck. Like, you're never going to end up short on a black deck. It feels like you can pretty much always find almost any of the black commons and put them in your deck, and you're going to be okay with it. Green, however, has really, really high highs, but it certainly does not have that depth that black has. But all that being said, I do think that green probably is still the second best color in this format, but anyways, I digress. Let's take a look at the hands here for the third and final game of our third and final match here for tonight. Cade looks rather unhappy with his hand, given just a glare at his face there. Looks like Noble's still thinking about his. Okay, Noble looks like we'll keep his hand, and Cade, I was correct, unhappy with his 7-card hand. He'll send that one back. Gonna try and find a 6-card hand that is a little more befitting for a game 3 here for the trophy. Alright, Cade, taking a look here at 7 fresh cards. Try and find one with a little bit more action. Oh, that might have been... I think this might be a 1-lander that Cade has, but looks like he's going to keep it. Of course, I only got a quick glance at the hand. There's at least 1 forest in there. There could be more. I'm not 100% sure. So, forest, and send the turn over to Cade, Will Noble. Cade draws a card. He'll play Forest for turn, Moss Viper as a follow-up. Noble draws a card, plays an island. Cade looks like manages to find another land here, and so he'll follow things off with an Elysian Caryatid. All right, ooh, has another land. So Cade's kind of really doing it. Oh, and he manages to find an Uro. He'll play the Uro on turn 3, so it will resolve. It looks like he'll gain 3 life, he'll draw a card, and he has the ability to play an extra land this turn. And before it sacrifices, he can actually add 2 mana with the Elysian Caryatid while the 6/6 is still in play. So if Cade actually manages to find a thing, he can basically free roll the Uro this turn. But it looks like he does not manage to find the land, unfortunately. The 1 land special ends here as far as the value is concerned, as Voracious Typhon enters the battlefield from Noble. Uro just kind of hanging out in the graveyard. It's going to be threatening at a later point in the game, but Cade's going to need to progress his board quite a bit before we end up there. Here's 4 mana for a Voracious Typhon of Cade's own. Send it right back over to Noble. So now Cade's got a nice 1/1 that he can use to block this Voracious Typhon, and he's got a Voracious Typhon to trade. Witness of Tomorrow's going to enter the battlefield for Noble. Now, Noble takes to the skies. Of course, Elysian Caryatid will be able to tap for 2 mana now. Although Cade does need to actually tap it here to cast this Witness of Tomorrow's. It does not, unfortunately, cost 3 mana. Noble, happy to offer the trade on the Voracious Typhons there. As both players staring at each other with Witness of Tomorrow's. Here comes 2 mana 2/3 from Noble. That's all that's going on, though. No land from him either. He's missing black at current. Here comes 6 mana. Oof. Return your creatures to your hand from Cade. Cade smells blood here. Goes ahead and attacks for 4. Omen of the Hunt will find Noble, that land that he was missing. He finds his black source, so got to be feeling pretty good about that. At least he's going to be able to redeploy the threats he had on the battlefield, assuming he finds 1 more land. Of course, the 6 mana unsummon 3 creatures and or enchantments, pretty powerful. And yeah, sure enough, Noble just gonna go ahead, play land, and then play the spells that he hadn't played before. So, gotta be feeling relatively fine about that interaction. He took some damage, but all things considered, he's essentially up a card on the exchange. Took some damage and it took a turn, but if the game progresses in such a way that he ends up, that the game ends up going to where players don't have cards in hand, he's gonna be relatively happy with that exchange. So here's an attack for 3, of course, for 4, excuse me, got +1/+0 from the Centaur, but that Centaur will be no longer as it gets taken down with a Mire's Grasp. We're now approaching Uro territory. Uro getting to be a pretty dangerous threat here, as Cade very close to being able to escape it. He needs 5 other cards. He has 3 currently. The Omen of the Sea will absolutely be able to sacrifice itself, which means Cade needs to sacrifice this Omen of the Sea plus put 1 other card into his graveyard to be able to escape this Uro. He will go top and bottom with his Omen of the Sea, and then he's just going to go ahead and deploy an Omen of the Hunt immediately. So he's getting lots of lands here out of his deck, and now he's got the two permanents that can be sacrificed to bring Uro back. He's got them in play now, and he gets some scries out of them. Speaking of scries, Noble will do just that with his Omen of the Hunt. And then he'll untap and take a draw. Alright, now we'll see what Noble has to do. I believe he has a drag down to the underworld in the back of his hand there. So a removal spell, potentially for Uro, hanging out in his hand. Although, of course, you don't feel particularly great when you removal spell a Titan that that essentially is just a, Cade's still going to get the enter the battlefield effect out of it. Of course, you gotta do what you gotta do and speak the devil here. Cade will sacrifice this Omen of the Sea. He'll look at the top 2, top and bottom. I assume that forest getting out of here. Cade will draw the spell. Oh, we draw the land. Labyrinth of Sykthos here. This is essentially 4 and tap for Maze of Ith. That's a pretty good one here, as a matter of fact. This is going to give Cade a lot of time to leverage the very powerful Uro in his graveyard. He is still 1 permanent short of being able to exile. If I'm correct, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are the requisite 5 in that graveyard. Of course, it's relatively easy to stack Magic cards on top of each other and make it hard to look at from this point of view. Cade will draw a card. He'll gain 3 life up to 26 now. Looks like Noble tapping some mana at the end of the turn. He's going to scry 1 with his Witness of Tomorrows. And it looks like he's just going to go ahead and drag down into the underworld the Uro. This makes quite a bit of sense, of course. You do need to get Uro off the battlefield. Of course, Uro will come back eventually if the game progresses long enough. And, well, given the current state of the game with only 1 card in hand for both players, Noble drawing the 2, that does seem quite likely as we see Protean Thaumaturge now enter the battlefield for Noble. And I bet he wishes that he had left that Uro in play long enough to be able to keep that in play. And Noble does end up just tapping his Witness of Tomorrows for essentially no purpose here. Looks like on upkeep, Cade will scry 2 lands, send those straight to the bottom. He'll draw a card. It is a land. We'll see if he has anything else he wants to do on this turn. He'll deploy his fancy 2-mana 2/1 that gets +1/+1 whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield. Noble will go ahead and scry 1 on end step with Witness of Tomorrows. Looks like that one will be going to the bottom. Plenty of card selection here at work from both players. While they don't have too much going on upkeep, Noble, thinking about scrying, decides against it and immediately gets punished, draws an island. He does have an Omen of the Dead in his hand, so he's just waiting for a card to be able to bring back. I think he has the requisite 7 mana to be able to escape his Voracious Typhon here, however. But it looks like he's just going to bring it back to his hand. Constellation, he will go ahead and have his Protean Thaumaturge copy the Witness of Tomorrows, and then here comes a 4/4 from Noble. So Cade will take 3 here, but the Labyrinth of Sykthos doing its best to keep things under control here. It's gaining Cade quite a bit of life. It looks like quite a good land here on this given board state. Now Cade taking a think if he has any good attacks. Looks like he says no, sends the turn back to Noble, who once again going to take a look at the top card of his deck. Noble thinking about this one now. This one potentially tough. Looks like he is going to leave it on top. He'll go ahead and draw that card. Interested to see what that one is that he thought about for so long, but it looks like we're going to get left on red here for a little bit. Noble will animate his land. Here looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4 enchantments in play by my quick count here. So 4 enchantments in play means that this land is a 4/4. So Cade will go ahead and Labyrinth away the Witness of Tomorrows. Still quite the force here on Noble's board that's getting sent in. Cade gonna line up a chump block here on the 4/4. Cade with the Moss Viper, looks like that one will be a trade. As a matter of fact, looks like he's going to allow Noble to escape it, and then a chump block on the other 4/4, the Island. And then Cade will go ahead and take the 3 points of damage from the Protean Thaumaturge in the air, and then Setessan Champion was the card that Noble was thinking about. So Setessan Champion, he did leave on top. He will draw, another forest from Cade. Cade cannot get Uro back, unfortunately, this turn either. At current, he needs 2 more cards in his graveyard to be able to bring this Uro back. So he'll have to pass the turn back over to Noble. Noble takes a draw. It is a land, unfortunately, for him. He'll go ahead and animate his swamp, and then he's going to use his Caryatid to animate another land. This makes sense to me. It seems quite valuable. Thinking, looks like he's decided that he would rather scry 2 here with the by sacrificing the Omen of the Dead with his mana than get another animated creature in there. So Cade, go ahead, makes a double block that will put one more card into his graveyard. Cade will untap. I count 4 other cards in his graveyard for Uro. Still not 5, unfortunately, for him. Island for turn. That one still no good. Cade, nothing but mana going on over here. Noble scries 1. I believe that this was the one land special from Cade as well, in case you guys at home are interested how this game has progressed. Here's a very large attack from Noble. Noble gonna go ahead and, or Cade gonna go ahead and Labyrinth away one of the many attackers here. I expect that we'll see a chump block to be able to bring back the Uro from Cade, as we will see that block. Cade will take a big hit from the creatures. Here comes another 4/4 from Noble. Now Uro able to be brought back, so gonna be very good. Costs 4 mana, and he will gain him 3 life and is a 6/6, so it's gonna stabilize this board quite well, or at least the ground quite well. He'll draw a card. It's another land. Unfortunate for Cade. He really needed action here. And with that, he'll send the turn back over to Noble. I didn't get a good look at the last card in Cade's hand, unfortunately. So we'll have to we'll have to wait and see, just as Noble will. Oh, Entrancing Liar off the top for Noble. That is brutal. And here's an attack for lethal after the Liar takes down the Uro, and that means that Noble will take down Cade in 3 games. Awesome. That was a super sweet match, and with that, that is going to be the end of our stream for tonight. So I'd like to thank all of you guys out there for coming and joining me for this first look at Theros Beyond Death. Thanks for sticking with me through all of the difficulties trying to remember the names of the cards, the effects of the cards, and all that. Obviously, it's a new set, but I had a blast doing this, so very, very happy that we got to do it. I think that we're probably going to be doing a stream tomorrow. More details to come, so make sure you follow us on Twitter, social media, Facebook, all that, if you want to keep updated on when we will potentially be streaming some more pre-release events. But with that, I think that we are going to call it a night. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you missed anything, make sure you check out the PodVod later on YouTube. I highly recommend Game 2 of the second match, just in general, if you missed that one. So that was a really good one. Yeah, okay. Anyway, I think that's all from us. So thank you to production. Thank you to the players. And thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you guys at the latest on Monday for some Modern. See you guys then.